Please stand for the invocation and then the pledge.
Dear God, as we come together today, we give you thanks for the good gifts you provide our community. We ask you for guidance and wisdom in our lives and in our community and on this board as we pray for your love, wisdom, and guidance would live among us. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll, Clerk Manley.
Bellinger. Here. Dockin. Here. Shed. Here. Otto. Here. Dominic.
Present.
Manley. Here. Crocker. Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Everyone's here. I'd like a motion to adopt the balance of the agenda as distributed. So moved. A motion by Chip, support by we have any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. That passes 7-0. Okay, we now have an opportunity for call to the public. Now, we'll have some presentations a little later on the North Village and the wastewater treatment plant. So if you'd like to talk in relation to those after you hear the presentation, there'll be an opportunity at that time. But we can't prohibit you from speaking now on those items. But feel free to come up and share your thoughts with the board. At this time, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name, your address, and welcome.
Mary Dillon, can you hear me?
I think it's not on.
Hello? No.
Is it in? Oh, okay. Good.
Mary Dillon, still is not.
I guess it's on. If Mr. Duffy can hear you, it must be on.
Hello?
It's a little low.
Is it
but-
on? Can you hear me?
Mr. Nelson, can you turn it up a little bit?
The Windows is still resetting, so I don't have control over it.
Okay.
I turned this on and it's not doing anything. Mary Devlin, 9211 Brookside Drive. You still can't hear anything.
You want me to explain here?
Okay. All right. Regarding the Lockwood draft report, it's on page 2, under section 5, according to the Lockwood group, the affordable component is also different than what most affordable housing is because of quote, higher median income in the region, quote. What survey was taken to come to that conclusion? Was it within Northfield Township or all of the or Lake, which includes a portion of Reno Township? Also, in that same section, it states that 60% would be market rate units with a rent of $2,200 per month. 40% of units would be affordable, 60% area median income with a rent of $950 per month. I'm sorry, I don't believe that either one of these sounds like affordable housing to me at all. Also, Lockwood talks about in section 2, but it's on the same page as section 5, that they talk about a patio/bar service. Would somebody on this board explain to me why we need another bar in this town? We've got about 8 of them, okay? Then the second thing, I'd like to just to refresh your memory. Do any of you remember that in 2008, there was a borrowing resolution to borrow money, for the township wanted to borrow money over $250,000, they would have to go to the voters. So if you decide to go with the expanded sewer plant because of its cost, then you would have to go to the voters. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And to my knowledge, it has not been rescinded. Also, what would the cost be to current property owners and any new property owners? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is State Senator Patrick Kolbeck, and my wife and I, we live in Canton Township, but we have a lot of friends here in Northfield.
You'll need to hold it right up to your mouth.
Okay. How's this? Better? So State Senator Patrick Kolbeck, we live in Canton Township, we have a lot of friends here in Northfield Township. I thank you for the opportunity to address this body. I was invited by Ton to come out and talk on a subject that I was one of the more outspoken opponents of some legislation up in the Senate regarding Senate Bill 637, and that impacts the discharge of your duties as trustees, because it was a bill essentially to usurp local control regarding the deployment of 5G systems, which is the 5th generation wireless technology. A little bit of background on me. In addition to being a state senator, I'm actually an aerospace engineer. I used to work on the International Space Station. I worked on cabling design. We were responsible for EMI, EMC protections for equipment on space station. I'm a pretty technical guy. My wife's the brains of the outfit when it comes to adverse health impacts. She's a pediatrician. And so we come from a unique background. And this issue is something that I've been looking at for quite some time. We put together a policy paper, a policy briefing that I think most of you have copies of. What it outlines is that a lot of the discussions around the deployment of technologies, and I'm a tech geek. I mean, I'm a big guy in the Internet of Things. I love technology. I'm a Microsoft certified small business specialist. I'm not afraid of technology. Obviously, I worked on space station. The issue is, though, a lot of our discussions that have been happening have been focused on the benefits, and nobody wants to talk about the risks. And we have to be responsible as public advocates about the risks of some of this technology, which means we need to have a frank discussion over different ways of going off and deploying or achieving the same benefit, hopefully in a way that mitigates that risk. This policy guidance paper that we put together, I believe, addresses some ways that we can go off and address those risks. There's bill before us. You have a resolution before you today that is addressing Senate Bill 637. I encourage the adoption of that resolution. That bill is currently scheduled for a hearing on October 4th out in the House Energy Committee. And I don't know what the tea leaves have to say for that right now. But essentially, if it does pass, what happens is that a lot of your ability to advocate on behalf of your citizens is abrogated because they usurp a lot of local control provisions. And just to put this in context, this is what's happening at the state level. At the federal level, there's a 1996 Telecom Act that essentially did the same thing at a different level on different terms regarding what the states can do regarding the deployment of these systems. And the telecom companies are effectively indemnified against any liabilities for adverse health impacts, which means that there's no feedback mechanism to say, don't roll this thing out yet, we're microwaving our people. This is not something that's safe. There is nothing that is a feedback loop to force them to address that. And I just appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to address it. There's very few communities who want to talk about this. It's a sensitive subject. Everybody loves the internet. But the fact that you guys are addressing this, I think you should all be applauded. And I just want to come here and lend support for your consideration of this resolution and your consideration of the policy guidelines that we've provided to you and you should have access to. If you have any questions, please contact me. I'd be glad to get back to you and give you the best information I have on that subject. So thank you very much. And I think my wife wants to come up and say a few words too. So, and by the way, thank you for starting off with an invocation. Very few communities do that nowadays. And I thank you for starting off with the invocation. I really appreciate it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Angie Kolbeck, and I support the resolution to oppose SB 637. While I'm from Canton Township and I'm not a resident of Northfield Township, I applaud you for your leadership in taking this issue up before this body today. My background is that I practiced as a board-certified pediatrician, and I studied hospital and molecular epidemiology at U of M School of Public Health. I have been following the studies showing the impact of wireless radiation on our health, and there are now at this point thousands of studies showing the following adverse health impacts due to wireless radiation: cancer, oxidative damage, DNA repair failure, cardiac arrhythmias, and other effects on the heart muscle, as well as blood pressure and vascular effects, ADHD, behavioral disorders and learning difficulties, sleep disturbances and memory loss. It changes the blood-brain barrier, and it also affects the neuron firing rate and EEG. It disrupts our immune function and change in stress proteins, and it also affects reproduction and fertility effects. I encourage you to look at the website, bioinitiative.org, which is in the paper that we provided you. These impacts are well documented in over 3,600 papers at this point. In addition, very recently, the FDA did a very large $25 million study. The FDA conducted it, and it shows that wireless radiation indeed does cause cancer and DNA damage. With all of this in mind, we should not be pursuing policies that would promote or increase our wireless radiation exposure to our citizens. 5G technology greatly increases our exposure to this radiation. Analysis of 5G networks have concluded that transmitters will be required every 2 to 10 houses. Ask yourself this: how many people out there would choose to move next to a cell tower emitting wireless radiation if you had a choice? Well, if SB 637 goes through, they will put the transmitters wherever they want, approximately every 2 to 10 houses, and you will have no choice. And the amount of wireless radiation you will be exposed to will be greatly increased. From a medical perspective, this will be disastrous. You may be asking yourself, why isn't the government protecting us from this? Unfortunately, it is the FCC that sets what a safe level of radiation of exposure is, not the CDC or the FDA. In many cases, in the past, the FCC chairman had strong ties with the telecom industry, either before becoming the FCC chair or received a high-paying job by the telecom industry after being chair of the FCC. This has led to looking out for the telecom industry, not the health of our citizens. In fact, the allowed level of wireless radiation exposure in the U.S. is 1,000 times higher than what is allowed in many other countries. Having the FCC chair be in charge of what a safe radiation exposure limit is very much like having the tobacco company in charge of telling you how many packets of cigarettes are safe for you each day. SB 637 has been passed out of the Senate and now sits in the House Energy Policy Committee. Representative Gary Glenn is the chair of this committee. I would encourage you to call Gary Glenn and all of the members of the House Energy Policy Committee to urge them to vote no on SB 637. Also call all your reps and urge them to vote no on SB 637. Also, you can call Speaker of the House Tom Leonard, who isn't, if he does not put the bill up for a vote, it will not come up for a vote. Let Tom Leonard know about this FDA study that shows definite cause of cancer and DNA damage. And I highly recommend that you support the resolution today to oppose SB 637. Thank you for your work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, anyone else at this time? And I would try to keep it down to 3 minutes. I know that was.
You always use
just
the light for
I
me.
can turn my light on.
I'm not a state senator. I don't get to excuse the light. Okay, it's green. My name's Craig Warburton, and I live at 450 West Joy Road, and I am a resident of this township. I'm not exactly sure where to begin. I have not been here in a while. And it was the resolution about 5G that made me come tonight. In part, not because I'm a radio scientist, but I know a lot about it. Because in 1993, Ameritech came to the end of my street to put up a tower. And at that point, the Planning Commission met on North Territorial. And myself and 4 or 5 other individuals filled that room for 5 or 6 months, every other Tuesday. And we kept Ameritech at bay. I spent countless hours in the public health library at U of M studying cellular technology and its relative effects. I don't understand where this township gets played like an idiot, and I'm sorry to take that attack. I was offended when a trustee went before the committee in Lansing and likened herself to be a representative of the township instead of just a private citizen. 5G is, you can stick your head in your sand on a lot of different levels, and I think to do it with 5G would be a profound mistake. I did not prevail with Ameritech. I spent $40,000 to sue them in court. I got 19 seconds before the judge, and he said, "You're crazy, get out of here, you're done." And then 3 days later, the tower was up, And thankfully for me, it's a monopole. It's got one provider on it, not 5. Most have 5 today. Many have 4. And, 1G was a little on the dangerous side. There's no question about it. Motorola went on record at one point saying if they really, completed their low Earth orbit program, they'd be frying brains around the equator in Central Africa. But that's not why I'm here. 5G has a lower power density. When the Telecom Act of 1996 was passed, I was heartbroken. You don't have the right to complain about health issues. You don't have the right to complain about placement. It made cellular technology and utility. You can say all you want about rights of way. You're not going to control a thing. They're going to put the towers where they want them. They're benign. I think we're much safer with 5G than we were with 4 and than we were with 3. And I think to be brought on a bandwagon that didn't emanate from inside the township is being abused and being used. I think you need to not send that. I mean, if you want to send something that's going to change the lives of people in this township, send it to Washington and complain about the current administration's propensity to increase discharges and increase pollution and remove safeguards from our own environment. I'll let that go with that, but I urge you to not pass that resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to come at this time and speak to us? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Lola Killey, and I'm from Ann Arbor, and I am here to support the resolution to oppose SB 637. And what I'd like to do is, there's been a lot of scientific discussion here, but I'd like to bring it down just to a personal level. I got involved in this effort to manage wireless radiation because of my brother-in-law, who was extremely sick from electromagnetic radiation exposure. And so I just wanted people to understand the exposure is accumulative. And so my brother-in-law started way back in the 80s using the Motorola radios to manage his construction company. And he thinks that that's when it got started, but he lives in Oregon, and a cell tower was put in a property next door, and he started to feel the effects. And then the power companies in Oregon started to do the sampling on their smart meters, and that's when his health really deteriorated. And so just so you know, I just want to make sure, my brother-in-law is extremely intelligent, ran a construction company, he has an engineering mind, and he can fix and do just about anything. But he's been sleeping in his truck for 3 years because he can no longer live in his home. And because he has dementia-like symptoms, he's got heart palpitations, he's got insomnia, and he's got other symptoms that are truly as a result of the effects of electromagnetic radiation. So I wanted to bring it to a personal level that people's lives are being damaged. People's spouses divorce them. They have to flee their homes. In fact, my brother-in-law bought a home in Florida because he could no longer live in Oregon. He spent 2 years going to different cities and town, country, everywhere. He cannot live in the state of Oregon because of the radiation effects that are in the power structure and where they put cell towers, and he's looked everywhere. So he's relocated to Florida. And so I just want you to understand that this stuff is really real. It destroys lives. And just because you may not be feeling the effects now, there's a certain level of radiation that you were being exposed to right now here in this room. But with the addition of 5G, it's going to then make everyone more radiated, and eventually everyone will feel it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lori Ebaugh, and I'm from Milford. But I've come to speak with you about this 5G issue and SB 637. I actually testified before the Senate Committee, Energy Committee, before they passed it on to the full Senate, and it was passed by the full. Do I need to start over?
Our system went off, Jim. Okay.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah,
tell me when I should start.
He's working on it. We should get a new sentence. Is it back on? Check.
Check.
Sounds like it. Can you hear me, Wayne? Okay.
Okay, start over? All right, my name is Lori Eva. I'm from Milford. I actually testified before the Senate committee that passed the bill out to the full Senate, and then the full Senate voted it through. That went very, very quickly. There were just a handful of us who were given the opportunity to testify before that committee, and they pretty much had already made their decision based on the conversations that they had had with the telecom communications industry before we ever showed up to give them our side of things. As I said, they during that meeting they went ahead and passed it, and it went to the full Senate later that afternoon. It was passed within a couple of hours. It was done. So we, the community, the people, haven't had much of a chance to speak on it. Now is our opportunity, now that it's on the House side of things. I do urge you to pass the resolution. I myself am electrohypersensitive, and I've had to move from my home so that I could be in a safe home where I don't have neighboring Wi-Fi near me. And the idea of the 5G technology coming into my communities is really quite frightening and daunting. And it's not just about me being hypersensitive, it's about all of us. As Lola mentioned, this is a cumulative effect, and so people can be in this for a while, and then all of a sudden the health effects start to hit them. In addition, this particular bill, the Senate bill, is also a power grab to take away your municipal rights, to say what goes in your municipal rights of way. And I don't think that we ought to let the telecom community, telecom industry dictate what happens in our communities or be unable to protect our citizens. So please vote for the resolution. Thank you.
Anyone else at this time?
Hey everyone, my name is Shannon Koenig, and I live here in Whitmore Lake on Main Street, and I want to say that I'm thrilled that the resolution I brought to you, that you are taking a look at it tonight. I really appreciate your bringing it up so soon after I brought it to your attention. When I gave my presentation last time, I started by asking a question, and only one person raised her hand. I'm going to start by asking another question, and I'm hoping I'm going to see some more hands this time. My question is, who in this room believes that one of the primary responsibilities of our Board of Trustees is to protect the safety and well-being of the people in Whitmore Lake? Can I see a show of hands who believe that this is a primary responsibility? Okay, keep them up there, because this is a part 2 question. Even when you are opposed by powerful corporate interests, do you still believe that? Let's see who. Okay, thank you very much. So I just have 2 things to say. I had sent you all some materials about giving more information about why I brought the resolution to your attention. I don't know if you've had a chance to read them yet. It was quite a bit of material. But if you can, I believe it was Angie Colbeck talked about how the FCC is a captured agency. That means that it is no longer looking out for us. And unfortunately, it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that our representatives in Washington have allowed this to happen. It's a disgrace that we, as citizens, have allowed that to happen. We have to be eternally vigilant. And finally, I wanted to draw to your attention that you do actually have the power and you have the responsibility as the final bulwark against any legislation coming down from the state that would impose itself on us, to say no. And the Michigan Constitution actually gives you that right. And I quote it, it's in the packet I sent you, but just so that it's read into the record, it's from Article 7, Section 25. Public utilities, acquisitions, franchises, sale. No city or village shall acquire any public utility furnishing light, heat, or power, or grant any public utility franchise which is not subject to revocation at the will of the city or village, unless the proposition shall first have been approved by 3/5 of the electors voting thereon. That means 3/5 of the people in the town. So you
15
absolutely have the
15
power.
more seconds, ma'am.
I'm
Go
done.
ahead.
I'm
Okay.
done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Good evening.
Well, maybe I can talk here. Margaret Rydell, 65141 West 8 Mile, Kiwanis. Just a couple of things. Want to send a thank you out to our 3 pizza establishments in town. They have sent flyers out. That's Marco's, excuse me, it's Marco's, Hungry Howie's, and the new Domino's. They have sent our flyers out about our rummage sale, which I thought was very kind. Secondly, a little commercial. Our rummage sale will be next weekend and the whole following week. Come see us. We're there. We'd love to have you come. Then I'd like to know who is giving us the hard time about the keys. There seems to be only 2 keys to the fire hall. It's been quite a burden to have to chase down the key and then have people call us and say, we need to know where the key is, and then have people get chased down on the road to get the key back, and to try to work some way so that people bring stuff and leave it and we can get it in. I don't know what the problem is, but I think that this town can afford a little bit more than 2 keys for the fire hall. Another thing, Mr. Dockett, a few meetings ago, you made some reference to the Kiwanis should be held as much to whatever was happening to as the private businesses, if you recall that. At any rate, the only difference between the private businesses and Kiwanis is that none of our money goes in our pockets. It goes to the people in this town. So I think that somebody like Kiwanis Group that is trying to better the people in this town should get cut a little slack, perhaps. And one more thing. The park. I think it would be a good idea if we had the people in town name the park. Maybe we could have a contest. Maybe we could run out 5 or 6 names and have people vote on it, whatever. And also, Kiwanis would like to do some stuff at the park, but we're a little bit hesitant because we don't know for sure if the park part of that piece of property is going to stay in the hands of the township. Or is it going to be deeded over to whoever develops it? I believe personally that it should stay in the township's hands. And it is a township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Devlin, 9211 Brookside Drive.
Okay.
She was talking about the park.
Yeah.
And this is going to be very short, Marlene, okay? What I want to say is, I have not heard this board officially, I mean officially, name that portion on the front part of that property as a park. You need to make a resolution to make it a park and the name of it. And it's Northfield Township, and it should be Northfield Community Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Good.
Scott Stewart.
Good. Thanks.
I just walked here. Parking lot's full. 9075 Kearney Road. Previous speaker, I had a conversation with the library about 3 weeks back. She had a big smile on her face about the senior citizen residential development at the park.
Okay. Thank you.
He didn't talk into the mic.
Mr. Stewart, you were saying that you had a conversation about And someone liked the fact that it was a senior?
I met Mary Dublin at the library.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was at the meetings.
Okay.
2 minutes into it, she had a big smile on her face, and she said, I want to see senior citizen residential development.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, David Gordon, 5558 Helena Road. I don't know how much discussion there's going to be when the presentation is made regarding the park, but I wanted to make a comment or two about what I saw in the packet. There's a cover letter from the supervisor regarding wastewater treatment, and there's a statement that's in there, Madam Supervisor, where you say, several of us on the board made growth in accordance with a master plan a key goal. I don't ever recall anybody saying, as you were running for office, that your key goal was to borrow $6 million that was going to cost us $9 million to expand the sewage treatment plant so that a senior living center could be built on the only piece of property left on the lake that's vacant. That was not part of the platform that you ran on. You also say here, which I think is very confusing to me, quote, a master plan that is widely accepted by the community as the growth plan. It used to be called the growth management plan. That was changed to call it a master plan, because I've watched this board operate as if you guys are developers, and development and growth and development is the #1 goal at all times. 3 of you have named sewer expansion as the #1 priority that you want to do in the community. The master plan is a document that's a vision of what the community will be. It's not marching orders that say you need to develop every parcel in the rural area to 5 acres because it's zoned for 5 acres, or you need to push growth. I mean, what this other woman said is, you know, the function of the board is to protect the residents and to protect our tax dollars. So I think that you've kind of lost sight of what the whole idea of the park was supposed to be. I mean, the whole concept of having a waterfront park downtown was to attract residents, people, actually non-residents, to Whitmore Lake, to maybe buy something here because they have lake access. And what I see is having happened instead is that we have a developer walked in, and now all of a sudden we've got basically later tonight what's going to be a sales presentation about how we should borrow $10 million to expand the sewage treatment plant so that we can have this developer put a senior citizen housing project on the only piece of property in the township on the lake that's available. I think you've lost sight of what the whole concept was, and I think it's important that you kind of reset and go back to the community who said they want a park. We don't even know yet whether or not you can build a park there, whether you can put your feet in the water. It's not very attractive right now. The water isn't. But we're going to go do this entire project that's going to cost millions of dollars, and then maybe find out if we can have a waterfront park later. I don't see how a senior citizen, senior living area is exactly going to bring people down to Whitmore Lake. Oh, let's go see the senior citizen housing project.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
I'll have more to say when we do the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right. Board member response to call to the public. Let's keep it to the call to the public's issues. Does anyone want to respond to anything? Ms. Bellinger.
The park name idea, that sounds like something we could definitely entertain, finding out a name for the park. I want to mention while we're talking about the park just briefly, there's going to be this Saturday, I left some outside there, there's a new path around the perimeter of the park. There's going to be, it's volunteers coming out this Saturday at 1 o'clock, rain or shine, to help us move the brush and finish marking the park path. It's about a mile long. It's around the perimeter. So okay. I'll talk more about that later. The other issue is regarding technology. Being opposed to technology is not what's happening here. Certainly fiber optic is an answer to this connectivity issue. with regards to technology, and it's safer, and it's actually more secure and very fast and reliable. I don't know what else I should say at this point. The big thing about this resolution that really disturbs me, which is why I brought this up to the board, and I thank the board for putting it on the agenda, is it does usurp the rights and the powers of the local units of government. And we can argue all day long whether or not there's health problems. You know, some people are, yes, there is, some people know there isn't. But there's no denying the trampling of the rights of the local units of government. Now, the reason I asked for this to be on this agenda, as opposed to waiting another week or two or a month or two, is October 4th, there's going to be a hearing in Lansing at 8 a.m. at the Capitol, at the 3rd floor. And this hearing is about the 5G and Senate Bill 637. So that would be on October 4th, that hearing, public hearing. Come out there and listen, or be a part of it if you wish. 8 a.m., October 4th. I thank the board for looking at this resolution tonight, and I thank the residents of Michigan and local communities, as well as our community, coming out and voicing their concerns both ways on this issue. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dockett?
Yes, I believe that if Kiwanis is N75 Barker, the chair or whatever, or who's ever in charge of Kiwanis ought to have a key. I don't see why they wouldn't. If they're using the building, I believe they should. And I was referring to, when the lady said that I talked about Kiwanis, I was referring to the building, not Kiwanis, but the building should be under the same rules of everybody, every other building in Northfield Township. That seems to make sense to me. Maybe it doesn't to the Kiwanis people, but I have nothing against the Kiwanis people. I'm talking about the building. It's owned by the people of Northfield Township, and we should set an example for everyone. Should get the same kind of treatment on the buildings. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I certainly was glad to hear my friend talk about the park.
Ms. Otto?
So I wanted to make a clarification on what was mentioned earlier about the public indebtedness notice in regards to the $250,000, where it was said that it goes to the voters, and really that notice has nothing to do with voting. It has everything to do with sending out an announcement by postcard, either announcement either in the newspaper or by postcard, to let voters know or let the public know that we are going to be indebted for anything over $250,000. A couple of things to clarify is that it doesn't state what type of an expenditure, just that anything over $250,000. And it doesn't, and it wasn't noted that as an ordinance in there that it was specific to what type of indebtedness that it was. So it really doesn't speak to indebtedness, it speaks more to expenditure. So I also wanted the public to know that this ordinance was voted on in April of 2004 by an outgoing board. And basically it was to hold something over future boards so we wouldn't have extravagant spending. So really what this means is that whenever the board has an expenditure of $250,000, a postcard or a notice in the newspaper go out to the public, which means if we go ahead and purchase a fire truck, a notice goes out to the public. If we purchase all of our monthly expenditures, a notice goes out to the public. The township, according to Steve Mann, he is one of our attorneys, has told us that the township already has a state statute for bonding requirements, no matter the dollar amount. So as soon as we decide that we are going to get a bond and we are going to go into debt, the board is required to notify the public and have a public hearing before the bond is authorized. So while this ordinance tries to tie our hands at $250,000, we already have a process in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else at this time? Ms. Zelnok, go ahead.
So I'd like to just comment that I think Ms. Rydell's recommendation for the park, maybe you could take that, Ms. Bellinger, back to the park, that Ms. Rydell's suggestion that we maybe select a few names and then ask the community what they want to be named.
No, this is a board decision.
What's that?
It's a board decision to give it to the park to do.
That's what we did. We gave the park to give it, so they would
Not to name it.
I believe we said that they would come up with a name if we look at the minutes.
I think they were going to make some
Yeah, they would
suggestions.
suggest a name, and that's what you must have misunderstood me. My thought was to take it to, as we have directed the Parks and Recs to handle the park, to come up with a name recommendation for the board. So that is my thought, is that it's in the Parks and Recs hands right now, that you could take it to the meetings and have them come up with a proposed name and use Ms. Rydell's suggestion of maybe going and asking the community. I was just concurring. I thought that was a good suggestion. Thank you. And then as far as the borrowing, the reason that was put in place, if I recall, is basically every time we walk into this building, there was $3.2 million expenditure. A public meeting, a public meeting wasn't held, or it was held at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday with a 48-hour notice. So every time you walk into the building, that is why that ordinance was put in place. So I think that is, I don't think it's a bad thing to let the people know when you're going to go borrow money.
But it has nothing to do with voting. It doesn't mean that we put it out to vote. I just wanted to clarify that.
That is correct, Ms. Otto. It doesn't go out to voting. We can expend as much as we want as a 7-member board. That is our fiduciary responsibility, is to protect the people, but it is what we can do. And again, when you walk into the building, $3.2 million was borrowed. And I don't think the people were properly notified and knew it even happened. So that's the reason that ordinance was put in place, is to let the people know. We can still vote the way we want. That is our ultimate, and that's why we're elected members. We get to vote. But it's trying to properly inform our people of what's happening, especially when we're going to indebt them, because in the end, it's their dollars that pay for the indebtedness. So, anything else? The key. I think it would be good. We have 2 keys. I think a 3rd key would be good for any community membership that's using they sign it out, that they can have the key and they can use it, because they are signing a document that says, they have the key, they will return the key, they won't make copies. So I think it might be something we can address now and going forward to any community resident or any organization, nonprofit within the community using that. It might facilitate ease of use for everybody involved. And I would like to thank everybody coming out to talk about the 5G. I think it's a very interesting topic at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Chick.
Just real quickly, I just wanted to clarify that when the last board purchased the North Village area, it was never intended to be just a park. It was actually, it's in the minutes, you can look it up. It was intended to go back on the tax rolls, to partner with a developer to develop part of it and leave the other part of it a park, and that's what we're trying to do. And the community has had multiple opportunities and did participate in several visioning sessions to tell us what they wanted to see there. In fact, they developed the synthesis plan, so we've been down that road already, so I just wanted to make that clear.
Ms. Manley?
Just want to say a quick thank you to everybody that came out.
Yeah.
I'll address the issues, when they come up and later on in the presentation.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Madam Supervisor, I actually drafted the ordinance that's on the books,
this isn't
and Ms. Otto tried to clarify it, but she
Mr.
actually
No,
she actually
Mr.
did not.
Mr.
I actually am
Gordon.
speaking as a former board member.
I think we
No,
ought
it's
to
not the
listen.
time for this right now.
Well, a clarification
Thank
should
you.
be a clarification, not a misconstrued interpretation. And
Mr.
I was the person who actually had that.
Mr. Gordon, go please sit down.
I would
Okay,
urge the board to
sit
read
down.
the borrowing resolution instead of taking somebody's
Okay.
word for it,
We'll,
which is
we'll get
inaccurate.
that passed out. Thank you. Township manager update.
I would like to say that I was here. They held a meeting in the afternoon. They borrowed $3.8 million. We went to the polls and we voted to spend $3.8 million. I voted for it. Then they borrowed another $3 million that no one knew about. Then they borrowed another $50,000 that nobody knew about it. So I think Mr. Gordon's absolutely right. I think that Ms. Otto is wrong.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll get that passed out for everybody. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Let's move on with the agenda. Mr. Ains, it's time for the manager update.
Excuse me. A couple items. First off, a number of items of business of the board have been delayed to the next board meeting because of wanting to have as much public input tonight as possible. So the issues of this building with modifications, the issue of the employee handbook, there's a number of other things that will be carried over to 2 weeks from now. Regarding the 75 Barker, the architect has begun the process of evaluating the building as the board had authorized and directed. And I expect to get a report within the next month or so back on what he considers would need to be done to bring it up to code and also to handicapped accessibility requirements. In addition to that, the fire department's fire inspector, as part of the permit given to the Kiwanis for having the temporary sale, conducted a fire safety review of the building for that particular purpose and gave us a number of issues that needed to be addressed. So I wanted to advise the board that first off, we have had emergency lighting and exit signs installed that are working in the building, and we appreciate very much the quickness the electrician was able to do that. Second, the other party in the building is going to remove a variety of items that have been identified by them, mattresses and other things, on Wednesday morning. So it'll be out of the way before the sale begins. They stated that we should avoid having anyone enter the second floor. And so we have installed a padlock and we have put notices up saying it can only be admitted to the second floor by permission of either the chief or myself. And we have the keys to that. And then there are some other issues that will be addressed as we go along. But basically, we're trying hard to get in compliance so that the Kiwanis can go ahead and have their sale proceed without the fire department closing it down. That's one of the reasons why we needed the key back. Was I'm trying to get the architect in, I'm trying to get these different contractors in and so on to try to assist the Kiwanis, not to try to interfere with them. I have signed the key out a number of times to George with Kiwanis, and we are trying to give him and the Kiwanis access to that as much as possible. But the number of keys, the accessibility is determined by the chief as part of his role as your safety director. He is a department head, I'm a department head, I have no authority over him. So I'm not at liberty to make the decision to duplicate something he's ordered me or told me for safety reasons not to do. So I'm not going to do that. But that's up to the board whether you want to direct otherwise. In addition to that, I wanted to mention the non-motorized path. The board had authorized previously that concrete be removed at certain locations where it was settling and tilting, and the contractor did begin on Monday. If you drive by, you'll see the excavation. A lot of it's been completed, but then we got the rains. So we expect the concrete contractor to complete it as soon as possible. But I did want you to know it's underway, and the public to know it's not intended to be something that will take very long, but it is being done for the safety of the public, not to interfere with access to the non-motorized path or the elementary school. In addition to that, we received notice from the Road Commission that they had been notified by the state of Michigan, MDOT, that we had to put a railroad crossing designation on the non-motorized path where it approaches the railroad. And so the Road Commission was agreeable, and I made the decision on an emergency basis to go ahead and have their contractor do the work so we would not have to go through the bid process or delay it. But I did receive one complaint today about it being slippery. And you know, I don't really have control over the materials that are used by the state or by state direction for these crossings, but I think it's intended to be a long-lasting material, and that may have an aspect of it being that way. We'll look into it further. And so I guess that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is correspondence and announcements. Do we have anything at this time? Did you have anything about this? No? Oh, okay. Pardon? Ton? Oh, you got an announcement? Go ahead, Ms. Bellinger.
I did get a correspondence from a resident called me this afternoon. She was saying that she would like the park to remain a park, or certainly she was concerned with what appeared to be a lot of what do you want to call it, construction and so forth slated for the Lockwood proposal. She was disheartened by the Lockwood proposal as she understands it at this point, and she would not be favorable to it. So I wanted to mention that. I did mention once already, so this is the announcement, the official announcement. This Saturday, Parks and Rec is going to have a bring your gloves and your brush moving tools and enthusiasm. We have a mile loop marked, and it's ready to be cleared. Come join us Saturday at 1 p.m. at the park on Main Street next to the post office. And that's it for that. And I mentioned about the public hearing on October 4th at Lansing at 8 a.m. I have additional information if you need it. I mentioned that once already, and I think that's all I have at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Okay, anyone else?
Just what time was that again, Ms. Bellinger?
It's at 1 p.m.
Thank you.
1 p.m. This Saturday, rain or shine.
Okay. Anybody else? Ms. Manley.
Just a quick reminder to everybody, November 6th is the election. You must be registered to vote by October 9th. It's a very long ballot, that long, two-sided. You have 16 candidates to vote for, 3 proposals, and a Washtenaw County proposal. It's the longest ballot in history. No more straight ticket voting, so lines will probably be long, so bear with us. If you're interested, come and sign up to be an absentee voter, mail in the application, then you can do it in the comfort of your own home. Come and get a sample ballot. You can go on the state website and get a copy of the ballot. So that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next item is approval of minutes of September 11th, 2018. Do we have any changes suggested to it, Mr. Dockett?
Yes, I have several. I'd like to read this.
Is this specific wording that you want changed, Mr. Dockett?
That's correct.
Okay, please do so. You need to speak into your microphone, Mr. Dockett.
Okay. Let me see, the one I'm interested in, Zilnock, it's on page 2, about the Parks and Rec. Page 2, left-hand side, Zelnick motion docket, supported to name Parks and Rec responsible for North Village Park. The chair, Sam Iquinto, listed a curb cut for ingress and egress as one of their bullet points that the Park and Rec would be working on. That is not in the minutes. It's not even mentioned in the minutes. And when she made the motion, I said if they are going to do the curb cut for ingress and egress, that I would support it, which I did. So I believe it should be in the minutes that I mentioned curb cut, Sam Iquinto mentioned it, ingress and egress, curb cut in his bullet points. So why is it not in the minutes? I think it's important.
I don't recall hearing that. Does anyone else? Yes. About the curb cut that Mr. Dockett said? Okay. Well,
Yes,
I remember
Mr.
him
Dockett did
talking about it.
specifically, yeah. And we-
Okay, so
As a matter of fact,
you want to put a dot at the end of the list of dots?
It's all right, whatever you're going to do.
Okay.
It needs to be in there.
Or discussed, okay.
We discussed it.
Okay. The
All
board
I gotta do is
discussed.
listen to the tape. You'll know that Sam also
Okay.
mentioned it. So it should be in there.
Okay, so can we add for the last dot, it says the board and committee discussed, and we'll add it as another dot, a curb cut at the North Village Park? Okay. Yeah,
For ingress and egress.
okay.
Okay. Number 6, top right. 75 Barker appraised cost estimate. I've asked for a copy of the $50,000 estimate for the demolition of that building. I have never got it. I've asked for it 2 or 3 times in the meetings. I would like to know if it's up to date. I'd like to have a copy of it.
Okay, I'll send you one, Mr. Dockett.
Well, you said that.
Well, I don't recall you asking me to send it to you. You wanted to know what it was, and I told you it was
No, I said I want to see it. I want to see if it's up to date.
Okay.
So, you'll send me one, but when? That's the question. Number 7, employee handbook, motion. Are you going to talk about that? Okay, that's it for me.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I will, can I take the ball from here, I guess, for a moment? I did review the video because Mr. Dockett had a question about this section on the employee handbook. And I also spoke with the manager, I think, for a few minutes today on this detail. The motion was to, as it says, Bellinger moved, Chick supported, that township non-union employees be allowed to accrue no more than 1 year of PTO, personal time off. So we had we were discussing currently, or it was 2 years. So no matter how many days, if you're allowed 40 or allowed 100, it was allowed twice that many that people could bank or accrue. So what we had voted on, I checked the video to assure that this was what we did, is we just simply made it 1 year. After that, they get paid that extra overtime. They can't bank it. So I believe that this motion is clear enough. Does it appear to be clear enough in what is written here to say that? Or does it need to be adjusted? I'm asking for anybody's recommendation.
Well, they're certainly not going to get a year.
No, it says no more than 1 year.
Well,
That's
1 year is 365 days. The most they can get is 30 days.
No, the intent was 1 year of PTO, which wasn't 365 days. If they were given 1 week, they couldn't accrue more than 1 week. That's what it meant.
Oh, I see what,
Right.
okay, I get it now. I get
It's
the
not
misunderstanding.
based on 365 days.
Right, I get understand the misunderstanding now. I didn't get what. It didn't mean 365 days worth, it meant 1
Well,
year.
it says 1 year. One year to me is 365 days. It should say not to exceed 40 days if you're a department head. And not to.
Perhaps the word should be 1 year of allowable PTO.
Well, maybe.
That way means
something.
different numbers for different people. Perhaps
does.
that's the word, allowable
year.
PTO.
Yeah, because I guess we had different PTO for 5-year, 10-year.
Exactly.
That type of thing.
Department head.
So what if we put the word allowable after
Year
of?
Okay, we'll add allowable right before personal time off.
Yeah, that way it covers the variations and the values.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks
Any-
for clarifying that, Wayne. I didn't understand what you meant at first. Thank you.
Any other changes to it? Okay, Ms. Manley?
One quick thing I just saw, and I don't know if it makes a big difference, but under the Park and Recreation Board Fund, agenda item number 1, we're giving them $5,000. It says $2,000 for this, $1,000 for this, $1,000 for this. We're $1,000 short. I don't remember where the other $1,000 goes.
Yeah.
So,
I don't.
does anybody remember?
It's,
So Lisa, I guess we can get to you where that other 1,000 goes.
Community garden, it looks like it's missing.
Okay.
Is it in here?
Yeah.
No, I don't see community garden.
All right.
That would be the
I think
thing.
it was community garden.
Okay. And then since we're talking about the handbook, and I've spoke to Mr. Dockett on this, I mean, it is a board motion that he will be getting paid by check. So I think it being a motion, it doesn't have really a whole lot to do with the handbook. I mean, I guess it's everybody's opinion, but it's a motion, unless we,
Well, I heard-
recall that motion.
He was given the exception.
I heard that you were going to look and ask Stacy if it could be an exemption for the board. That would be a blanket. I heard that in the tape today when I went and reviewed this to find out what Mr. Dockett was referring to. I heard you and Marlene speaking, and Marlene was going to check with Belle Isle to find out if this exemption could just be strictly for board members.
Okay.
That's my assumption, is it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
would
for
be.
Mr. Dockett, yeah,
Yeah, mention that it would be exemption for just board members.
yeah, unfortunately,
I think
yeah.
it should just be a docket exemption.
Yeah, a docket
You know,
exemption.
'cause that's what we voted on, because it's a payroll nightmare.
Yeah.
We never, at this last meeting, we did not vote. I would not, there's no vote at this
Right.
last meeting.
Right.
I would not vote for something for myself.
Right, yeah,
So I didn't vote, and nobody else voted either.
okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Are we okay? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes as amended.
I'll support.
Motion by Chockley, support by Otto. Any more discussion?
Are we going to see a copy of that before?
A copy of what?
Of the
changes.
Of the changes?
The changes of what?
Of the minutes or of the,
Yeah, of the
or of
minutes.
the handbook?
Of the minutes.
Of the minutes? No, we're adopting it tonight. Oh, you want an updated copy?
Yeah, I'd like to have a
Oh.
copy.
Well, ask Jennifer for that.
Okay.
I'm not going to do everything for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a
I get in
question?
trouble for not doing it, so I got a lot of stuff on my plate.
Okay, just say you're not going to do it.
I'm not going to do it, no.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question about the minutes?
Go
Not
ahead.
this minutes, but the minutes in general. Are we, because it had been brought up at a previous meeting that we were going to have copies of minutes available for our community down in the public, down at the offices. Are we doing that?
Or the library even?
Down in the library. We could, would this board like that? At least they're official minutes.
Official minutes, yes.
Official minutes.
Yeah.
We could
Yeah,
probably
it should only be after the board votes on them. Right.
Right, so we could put the official minutes out at the library and then
I know we talked about it, but I didn't know if they were
and
there.
downstairs.
Yeah.
In the community center. I think that would be appropriate. We don't need 1 million copies, but, you know.
Yeah, the public had asked because they don't all get to see the meetings, so.
Sure. Okay.
Will you sign that?
That's yes, we can assign that to Mr. Ains. Okay. Okay. The next item is the presentation. Okay. You're up.
You want a break?
Do you need? We've been sitting for an hour and now we're just getting to the presentation. Okay. An hour. Okay. Well, this is supposed to only be 10 minutes for this part. Okay. Well.
I don't care. I don't want to see it.
We can. Yep. Yep. I would like to thank Ms. Zelnok for putting this together. This is really good. This presentation is very comprehensive. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So just a little background on this is that I just thought it would be good to consolidate the information that we have on our website into one place to give us an overview of our government structure. So I started out this very grimble document about everything and anything, and then I got it down to a little better PowerPoint, and then Jennifer Carlisle helped me to get it more concise. So this is a combined effort. And again, the information came from a little bit from the MTA, not much, were the statutory duties, and then the other information basically came from our website, as well as the job descriptions that we have for our employees and people of the township. So it was, again, consolidation of information that was out there. So the first thing is, and maybe board members can tell me about when we approved this, but this is our org structure, and this was actually the basis of the presentation. So we have the Northfield Township residents and our voters. They're our #1 people in the township, and then under that, they vote for the Northfield Township Board of Trustees. And then we have our assessor, we have a deputy treasurer, we have a deputy clerk, and I'm just going kind of down and left to right. We have the public safety director, which handles our police department, and the fire department, as well as a general maintenance contractor. We have the township manager, the township attorney, that the 3 of those report to the Board of Trustees. And then under that, we have the wastewater treatment plant, the building and zoning department, the community center, as well as the senior center, and the township controller, code enforcement, assistant to the township manager, and probably one person that's missing there is our front desk clerk. So then over on the left-hand corner, you're going to see up there we have the township committees and the commissions, and we'll go through those. So again, this was an organization structure that was approved several meetings ago, many meetings ago, and that was the basis. So Northfield Township is a general law township. We're not a charter township, as people know. It's 36 square miles, and again, we have a government body that is made up of 7 board members: supervisor, trustee, clerk, and treasurer, rather, and then 4 trustees. So the main responsibilities of the Board of Trustees determine policy, rules, and laws not directly set by state or federal law, and they set these policies through various regulatory means at open public meetings. So all our meetings, when we make decisions, have to be open to the public. Responsible for the township's fiduciary health, and attends board meetings and votes on all issues where there is no conflict of interest. So then we go to the supervisor's office. Again, these are some of the main responsibilities. It moderates the board and annual meetings, oversees the assessing department, secretary to the board of review, member of the DDA, and develops the township budget with assistance and the township manager. But that is the statutory duty of the supervisor, and statutory duties can be delegated to other members of the township. The treasurer's office, we collect real and personal property taxes, delinquent personal property taxes, and the mobile home park pays us a $3 coach fee for every coach that is in the park, be it occupied or unoccupied. We keep account of the township receipts and expenditures. We deposit the township revenues in approved depositories. We invest township funds in approved investment vehicles. And we must have a deputy. The main responsibility of the clerk's office is to maintain custody of all township records, which includes the minutes, the ordinance book, and the book of oaths. So every time when we get elected, we take an oath, and then our deputies also take an oath. Registered voters and runs the township elections, sewer billing, and administers the payroll. And again, the clerk's office must have a deputy. So now we go into the department heads. As you know, we have a township manager, Mr. Ains. The public safety director is Chief Wagner. Wastewater treatment plant superintendent is Dan Willis, and the community center director is Tammy Averill. So the main responsibilities of the township manager, and this is where I got the information really from the job description. We have a summary, and I took some information from that summary. Not all individual responsibilities. The township manager is appointed by the Board of Trustees. He oversees the day-to-day administration of Northfield Township that is not under statutory authority of the elected officials, facilitates the flow of information and understanding of the ideals between and among elected officials, employees, and citizens. So he is here to listen to the residents and address their concerns and communicate anything, as he did tonight, as Mr. Ains did in his management report. He tells us what's happening within the township and what he's working on. The public safety director, actually I'm going to go to point 2, is to protect the community and to enforce the laws and ordinances. So the goal is to protect the citizens. And another responsibility is Mr. Wagner has the overall management, planning, and coordination and direction of the police and fire department. He is under the general supervision of the township board. The wastewater treatment plant, he managed the wastewater treatment plant. He maintains the plant and does the repair and operations, and he has 4 employees, so he supervises those employees, and the wastewater treatment plant superintendent reports to the township manager. The community center director, Ms. Averill, does a lot, as we know. There's a lot of programs out there, and she maintains the senior and community programming activities, and she reports to the board. She also goes to the Parks and Recs meetings and is the secretary and takes the notes from there. She has special events as the movies at the park. She has the root beer floats, and she does a lot of things for the community. So now we go to the Northfield Township boards and committees. The Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, Parks and Rec Board, Board of Review, Downtown Development Authority, Land Preservation Committee, and the Downtown Planning Group. So the Planning Commission advises the township officials in matters of planning and development of the community, prepares plans, and makes recommendations for the land use and the environment. Updates the Northfield Township Master Plan, provides language and amendments to the zoning ordinance, reviews zoning requests, site plans, and conditional land use requests. We have 7 members on that board. Larry Roman, Janet Chick is the Board of Trustee, John Zarzecki, Brad Cousineau, Sam Iaquinto, Iman Dwyer, and Cecilia Infante. Going to the Zoning Board of Appeals. This board has the ability to grant variance and exemptions on zoning ordinances, including interpretation of the zoning text or map, appeal of administration decision, variance of development standards, and other specific duties associated with the ordinance nonconformities. So I make me a little help here. Stephen Safranik, thank you. Jackie Otto is the Board of Representative. Greg Kolecki, Ken Dignan, and Brad Cousineau is the PC, and James Basili is the alternate if there is one needed. The Park and Rec Board establishes a vision for future parks and recreation opportunities in the township, develops projects that can be implemented, and provides a tangible benefit to the community. And as Ms. Bellinger said, we'll be out there, the board will be out there working on putting a path in at the park on this Saturday at 1 p.m. and charts a path and defines direction, recognizing the Parks and Recreation Board's fiscal restraints and the actual needs of the residents. So it's a 9-member board: Sam Iaquinto, Chuck Stoyer, Todd Bellinger is the board rep, Doug Wilbert is the DDA rep, Lee Cole is the school board rep, David Gibbons, Jennifer Delisle, Tim Seville, CC Karnick. Hopefully, and then we go to the Board of Review. Reviews the assessment roll received from the assessors for complete, accurate information. To me, this is very important that in March, there is a property appeals, and I know our assessor sends out that information. So if you have any concerns or you come in, go to the Board of Review to do any property appeals. The other thing is there are 2 other meetings that happen in July and December for clerical errors. And there was a gentleman that came in just recently in the office, and he hadn't filed his PRE exemption. So he's going to come to the December Board of Review and show his paperwork so that 18 mills is removed from his taxes. So
what does that exemption mean?
So if you are a property owner and you live in your property, you are exempt the 18 mills on school taxes. And if you don't own your property, you pay those 18 mills. So he was pretty astonished looking at his tax bill because he had the 18 mills on it. So we directed him to come to the Board of Review in December to show the proper paperwork that basically he just did not file the PRE exemption. The personal resident exemption. Thank you.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah. So thank you. So, and it's a 3-member board: Terry Webb, Scott Chisholm, Chris Salata. Thank you. And Dan Smith is our alternate. Then we have the Northfield Township Downtown Development Authority, the DDA, as we call it, to understand public improvements and activities that have the greatest impact in strengthening the business district and attracting new private investment. This is a 8-member board: Barbara Watkins, Doug Wilbert, Anna Quinto, David Horton, Marlene Chockley is our board rep, Dana Forrester, Denise Kevich, Jenny Oli, and Jack Seacross. So I probably got Denise's name, so my apologies. Then we move to the land preservation, and they look and to advise the Board of Trustees on ways to preserve high-value agriculture and natural lands in the township. It's an 8-member committee: Jacob Donner, Pat Kelly, David Perry, Sue Schink, Julie Henshaw, Andy Lacatos, Mary Robinson, and myself. I'm the board representative. Then we go down to the last one is the Downtown Planning Group. This helps identify opportunities for the downtown Whitmore Lake and to come up with new and innovative plans to revitalize the hamlet area. They will collaborate with the DDA, the Board of Trustees, the township planners to come up with the implementation plan for not only the 23 acres on Whitmore Lake, but the entire downtown area. So this came from our website. So if we need to maybe update this, we should probably think about updating that. Yeah. So we have an 8-member committee: Barbara Watkins, Jenny Oli, Tammy Menzel, Jack Seacrest, Susan Belrohr, Linda Lupi, Cindy Seacrest, and Tom DeKaiser. And this presentation is now on the website, and if you have more information, please do go to our website. So, and part of this is to really thank all the members of the board members that volunteer their time, other than is the ZBA paid?
Yeah.
The ZBA and the Planning Commission are paid, and the rest are volunteers that come out, so.
Yeah, the Planning Commission and the ZBA are required boards for the township.
Yeah, okay. So we should probably actually, maybe I'll add that in there, required, and then they're paid. So I just want to, again, it consolidates the information and it tells you how robust our really township and what it takes to run a township. We have a lot of people involved. Any other questions or anything?
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Chick.
Can I just make a suggestion?
Yeah.
And I've said this before, not our website, but our public channel, it really needs to be updated because none of that information's on there. It's all the old That's stuff.
like about
Yeah.
6-7 years old.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
on the public
Yep.
channel.
So we should try to put that on there.
Yeah. I also, I think this is really a great presentation. I also think that under the general law, you may want to include what makes us different than charter townships.
Yeah, I was trying to really find something on the MTA on that. and
Because people think that our taxes are high and it's
Right.
the township taxes and it's really not the township because we're
Correct.
limited.
Correct. We are in fact, we're not at that limit.
Right.
Yeah. And it's very small. You're correct. Where if you were a charter, you could tax higher.
You can get up to 5.5 mils, I think,
5.5
if
mils,
you're a
yeah.
charter, but
Right.
we can only
So
get up to
I'll-
1, but,
I'll see if I can find more information on that.
yeah, but we're at 0.78 or something right now.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're even below what we could charge.
No, we can't charge any more than that.
Okay, we can't.
We
I thought it was-
are
I thought it
at
was
the
1%.
top. Don't say that. We get every penny we can get from the taxpayer. Don't say we don't.
We could raise it?
No, we can get up to, we can go up to the 8 point, whatever, but we don't.
So I will actually
Okay.
add that in there as about what we could charge and what we
Yeah.
do charge and a little
Okay.
bit more on general law. Yep.
Okay.
I'll add that.
Good.
And then I will just show you one other thing I did do is just, for time's sake, because I did do an appendix, and what it does show is, I'll sit back down so people can see, and I'm not going to go through it, but it does have the other personnel in our office of, what their job descriptions and responsibilities are. It goes through the assessing department, deputy clerk, deputy treasurer, the wastewater treatment plant, the 4 different positions we have out there, township controller, and then it goes through code enforcer and assistant to the township manager, and then this might be of interest, so for our full-time police department, we have the director of public safety, we have 2 administrative assistants, the interim lieutenant, sergeant, detective sergeant, interim sergeant, full-time officers, we have 6, part-time officers, we have 4, reserve sergeant, we have 1, reserve officers, we have 4.
Okay.
And then going to the paid-on-call fire department, again, the director of public safety, we have an administrative assistant, deputy chief, assistant chief, 4 lieutenants, and 17 firefighters paid on call.
Okay.
So that'll also be out there. Again, it's a little bit more detail, but it does address everybody, because certainly it takes a whole lot of people to keep the township moving forward. So I appreciate everybody's work in the office and all the boards and all the people that volunteered, again, to make the township a good township. Thank you.
And a lot of money. And a lot of money.
It does. Oh, give that to Mr. Okay.
All right. Are we on? We are on. All right.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Oops. Do you, okay. You did 15. Okay. Then hit from the beginning up in the upper left corner, Mr. Oh, there you go.
Got it?
Perfect.
All right. Now comes to the fun part of the evening. We're going to have, I think mine is the first of 2 presentations, and then we're opening up for public feedback, which is great. My presentation is on the North Village proposal, and this is an update regarding the proposal that was received to the township by the Lockwood Development Group to help develop it. I do appreciate the comments earlier from Trustee Chick, reminding everyone that this has been a long process, that it started back when the board decided to purchase this site and purchase it with the intent of providing public use, but supporting that use with some taxable development. We have had much public engagement. In fact, the downtown planning group that was just presented, it was one of the committees the board formed in order to evaluate and create a vision for the use of this site. The plan for the North Village actually was headed up by them, and we had several public meetings as part of that process, visioning meetings, to actually develop what we called a synthesis plan for the site. And the purpose of the synthesis plan was to do 2 things. One was to show a desired amount of public uses. What public uses, what programming elements did residents desire to be included in this on the site? And then 2, if there was private development on the site, what types of uses are preferred by residents overall for private development, and at what intensity? Following the creation of that North Village plan, the township created and put out an RFP to solicit responses from proposed developers, or from developers to propose potential development on that site. And the township received 1 RFP, and that RFP, that proposal, was from the Lockwood Group. Lockwood Group does specialize in senior housing. They do all sorts of housing developments, but their specialty is senior housing development, not assisted living, but independent living facilities, kind of like apartments, but they're age-restricted apartments. For only people over 55 years old are eligible to live there. And frequently, independent living also has an affordable housing component, which makes them eligible for certain tax incentives. So by way of kind of introduction, I just wanted to briefly go over the North Village plan this evening. This is the site that we're talking about when we say North Village. It is north of Barker Road, west of Main Street, and it does have a few key access points along the beach, and then another access point closer to Main Street, and 2 access points on Barker. It is overall 23 acres, and it fronts on the rail corridor, and it is also one of the only township-owned sites that has lake access. I mentioned in the introduction, as part of the planning process for the township's North Village plan, and this is the township's plan, a certain amount of design objectives were included, and these were things that we heard from residents were really important to include in any proposal. Public space or a town green, possibly three 2-story mixed-use buildings on Main Street. So the idea was to use Main Street to extend the character of downtown Whitmore Lake, and make good use of the parts of that site that do open to Main Street. And then we had strongly recommended objectives, including a public stage or amphitheater, a band shell, something to support public performances, and complement views of the lake as part of that, really take advantage of the vista there. Having some passive recreation space or a field where residents could get together, enjoy the day, and that should be designed in conjunction with where the band shell was sited, and the restroom, a restroom should be provided. And then a circulation system that made the desirable connections to both Main Street and Barker Road was desired so that there was more than one access point for traffic management. More strongly recommended design objectives to preserve woodland clusters, to provide for a multimodal path on the site, to connect that site potentially through the underpass to what is now being developed as a park and ride by MDOT on the northeast or the southeast side of the 8 Mile overpass. And that, if possible, any parking passive recreation area could be used for special event parking. More design objectives, that loft-style housing of up to 4 stories could be considered on the far edge of the site to buffer between US 23. Essentially what this is if there was any higher density housing, it was the desire of residents to put this in such a location that it would both buffer the highway and also not block access to residents from the lake, which was the desirable part of the site. To make sure that the character of any development was contributing to the character of single-family homes that currently exist in the Whitmore Lake hamlet, that they had front porches, pitched roofs, and that any housing outside of the loft-style housing would be similar to the height of single-family residence, not more than 2.5 stories. A new sand beach was a desirable element to support swimming, possibly fishing docks, and public access to the waterfront. And community garden was also a desirable element. So this is what we did evaluate with residents, different levels of density, and this was a low to moderate density solution. What we heard was residents wanted most of the site to be maintained as public. So this plan kind of cites what we described as loft-style apartments along 23. It maintains a circulation system, has a central town green, band shell, 2.5-story, more cottage-style units, and then space for mixed-use downtown-type developments along Main Street. So this would actually flow into downtown and really match that character as we go up to the beach area. Now, this synthesis plan really is meant to be a visual representation to developers of the types of features that residents desired if this site were developed. Not really the plan that we would require people to submit verbatim, but more of a visual representation of a plan that would fit the types of objectives we heard residents wanted to see on the site. This is just a little bit zoomed in view, and then we have some renderings of what that development might look like if you were standing on the site. This would be standing kind of facing the lake, looking at a band shell, and some cottage-style units with 2-story mixed-use development. You're seeing a bird's eye view here that shows what those cottage-style units might look like next to a community garden with a pavilion, and then the loft-style buildings on the rear of the site buffering the community space from US 23. So again, these are the renderings. These are included in the township's North Village plan, which was developed with residents and certainly embraced by the DDA, Planning Commission, and the board when we were presenting it prior to releasing the RFP. Township did release an RFP, and we did receive a preliminary proposal from Lockwood, which was discussed a little more than 60 days ago at a board meeting, and we heard from the board and the DDA a desire to look for some revisions in this plan. This is the initial proposal that was submitted. It does hit a lot of the points that were included in the vision plan, but We heard that we'd like to see some revisions. Some of the comments made was the township wanted to see more mixed-use buildings, more open space on a proposal. They wanted to see a proposal that had primary ownership options, a de-emphasis of the senior housing component. If there was a senior housing component, they wanted to see it kind of less of the focal point on the site. We also heard again that the loft housing was a desirable part of the vision plan, and that a larger common area was desired. If rental was included, it was noted that that is certainly a good option for both senior residents and that millennials do desire rental housing. That the beach was a priority, and that in general, the board wanted to see this move more in the direction of what was presented in the vision plan. And we heard that the retail with upper floor potential apartments or office uses was a really important part of the proposal that wasn't addressed very well by Lockwood in their initial submission. And there were some shown on this plan, but it wasn't really clear what was meant. So the township manager and I were directed essentially to have several meetings with the developer and look to get a final and best proposal or a revised proposal. And there's a memo in your packet tonight that outlines what we expect to be submitted in that proposal. We're not at this time in receipt of a formal proposal, but I can say that the elements in my proposal are generally representative of what we expect to receive in writing as part of the final proposal. And we have received visuals from Lockwood that also kind of outline the bullets that I summarized. So going back, we'll see that this is the revised, after meeting with the manager and myself, and we shared the comments that we received from the board with the developer, and we met with the architect and the developer, and they went back and revised the plan. You'll see that the prominence of their proposed independent living facility is placed at the rear of the site, and all the parking is placed behind that, closer to where US 23 is. And that allowed for the town green area to be the focal point and move to the front of the site. And I think that this was more consistent with the plan that was proposed for the North Village plan. There is still showing cottage units. The cottage units will be proposed as a phase 2, and it does show a revised circulation system, public parking, a band shell in the center of the green, which could also be a pavilion, and public restrooms. And these mixed-use buildings are shown on the site. Let me just walk through these bullets that I provided to you, summarizing. So the revised proposal, Lockwood still expects to include as part of phase 1 approximately 120 to 140 units of senior housing. The architecture will be timeless and complementing the styles that you see in the township. We did get also a rendering of what that building might look like. You'll see that there are pitched roofs, porches for every unit. Every unit will have porches, a variety of materials, stone and wood, and generally, it will be a nice landscape facility. And the idea is that a patio, as part of this unit, would flow into the community green, so that all of this really is perceived as public space and could be accessed as part of that green. So there was a question about the proposal for phase 2 and a desire to make more of the housing for ownership. In discussing that with with Lockwood's group, they've agreed that essentially they're offering an option on the housing, which we could put a time limit on as part of a development agreement. But if they were to exercise that option, they've said that they'll propose at least 50% of cottage units to be not age restricted, essentially market rate units available for ownership to anybody that purchased. There was also a question about the economic effects of senior housing, and Lockwood did provide some details on what their expected income range for residents would be, and what that would result in net worth or annual income for residents. Essentially showing that residents will be contributing members of Northfield Township if they were to live there. Lockwood Group also provided some information which was mentioned in public comment about what affordable housing really means. And I think that it's important to put in context that affordable housing is defined by HUD as what qualifies for affordable housing and affordable senior housing in order to get federal subsidies or qualify for tax breaks. And that generally that means the median income is defined by the census. So it's based on now it's a 5-year annual census update. And the 60% area median income for Northfield Township was $37,100 for single occupancy and $37,100 for single occupancy and $42,000 for double occupancy, which is still a pretty high median, and that's 60% of median income. So if someone making that as a retired senior would still qualify for that housing. And I think that is basically what they're saying is you could have some pretty high income people living in these units, and that there certainly is a need for more affordable housing. They've also said that at least 60% of their units would be market rate units, and their target rent would be $2,200 per month for market rate, and that's comparable to what the prices for other independent living facilities are in the region. So this is expensive housing. I think that's the message. They build high quality development. You know, these units would be, you know, fairly luxury units with lake views and porches. That's why they're interested in doing it, I guess. At least that's what we heard when we met with them. So I mentioned they revised the concept to centralize the public space. Here's another point. The board said that the Main Street buildings were very important. Lockwood did clarify that they are not really the best developer for those. They're a housing developer. They don't do mixed use. So the township could retain those and immediately seek other developers that were more experienced and better fit for those units, and that by splitting that part of the vision plan off, there's another opportunity for the township to realize some of the investment that you've made in the site. It will include basically the financial analysis has indicated that the level of development proposed for the independent living facility could support a value of phase 1 improvements that would include restrooms, lighting, 50 public parking spaces, a band stage, gazebo, and public art / monument. So, you know, they are proposing a fairly large investment, and part of that would be purchasing or providing some payment to the township. I will say, as covered in my memo, for the revised financial details, we've gotten some information, but we'd like to meet with the township attorney and Lockwood to discuss how a potential offer might be structured. So that would be recommended for a follow-up presentation to the board. And assuming the board would like us to move forward and have the township attorney meet with Lockwood and the township manager and myself, that would be a next step to formalize that, that proposal. So next steps to be considered, I think the board could consider scheduling either a special meeting or a presentation at a regular board meeting with the Lockwood group. I think they would be willing to come and discuss things with the board. I think that the other thing that we've discussed at several meetings is the benefit potentially of appointing a subcommittee. Right now the board is the sole authority to make this decision, and you've been having the township manager and myself make reports to you. It certainly would be reasonable to appoint a committee to evaluate and get a report from a committee. The township manager and myself could support that committee if you decided to appoint them. Certainly I'd mention that I have heard that the Parks and Recreation Board has been requested, or Parks and Recreation Committee has been tasked with doing some planning for the park. And it might be appropriate to ask a member of that committee to sit on a committee, as well as a member of Planning Commission, the DDA. I think that there are a number of people working on and invested in this vision, and providing an opportunity for them to provide feedback could be a prudent next step. I've noted in my report that certainly, which was discussed at our last meeting as well, since we know now that Lockwood really doesn't view themselves as the best developer for those Main Street pieces, posting a follow-up RFQ, I think, would be prudent and certainly an easy step for you to take. You already have the website set up. We already have, the RFP that we've already proposed that could very easily be modified to create an RFQ that you could have up.
The board likes to have the initials explained, what they stand for, RFP and RFQ.
Oh yeah, the RFQ is a request for qualifications, and the RFP is a request for proposals. Initially, the board asked for a request for proposals because we wanted to evaluate the financial impacts of any private development in how it could help to fund any public improvements as part of it. And the proposal was necessary to do that. At this time, I think an RFQ, request for qualifications, would also be prudent, because essentially we could just meet with any other developers that were interested in this vision at this point in the process. I think that would be a good next step. So the final thing for next steps that I outlined in the memo this evening is to, following the review of the revised Lockwood proposal, that the board could provide staff with specific guidance on any desired revisions to the proposal, or specific requests for additional information. So essentially what I'm saying is, what we've heard from Lockwood, we'd like to get that formalized by them into a packet, and then I think that we would look for the board to provide some specifics at that time as to anything that you'd like to see in a final revision. Although if you felt like a revised proposal did adequately meet your concerns, you could certainly authorize the manager in consultation with myself and the township attorney to work on a potential development agreement. So there we are. That's my presentation. I know that there will be some discussion and questions this evening. Certainly glad to be making this report this evening. I think these exhibits are certainly some progress that has been made in the past 60 days. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, since this whole evening was supposed to be to hear feedback from the public. We do have some public here who may want to come up and ask a question or give their impression and on this whole project. So please don't be wordy, but get to the point. But if anyone would like to make a comment on the proposal, feel free to come up to the microphone and do so. Otherwise, the board will discuss our impressions. Is it on? Yeah.
David Gordon, Helena Road.
Okay.
The first thing I want to say is that I really hope that whatever project goes into the park area is successful and helps attract people to the community. I had a couple of questions for the planner. The downtown planning groups. I was at some of those meetings. I was certainly at some of at the original one at the park, and one here in this office, in this room. Was there anchor for the vision ever a senior living building? Was that part of the vision of downtown planning group? No. Mr. Lippens?
Yeah, Mr. Lippens. He's wondering if a senior housing was ever considered as an anchor for that area. And
we did hear when we were doing the downtown planning group, we met, or not the downtown planning, when we did the downtown vision plan, which was separate from the North Village plan, we did do a focus group at the senior center. And we did hear that there was a strong desire for more senior apartments and living in Northfield Township and specifically in downtown. And that is mentioned in the downtown plan. It was not specifically mentioned as part of the North Village plan as a target. And we got feedback in a memo from the DDA that stated just that they were questioning whether or not a senior housing component was a good use for downtown.
Thank you. When the original survey was handed out at the park, I think there were 400 plus responses, and more than 60% of them said they wanted just a park. They didn't have the mixed use concept or the synthesis plan at that time. Have the residents ever been asked whether or not they'd be willing to tax themselves just to have a park? The community here is very generous. They've taxed themselves for the library and the police and fire and this building and lots of other things. I'm just curious if that's ever been a concept, because right now they're in a situation, that's the first part of that question. The second part is, the residents that are in favor of this park, are they aware that it's coming with an $8 or $9 million sewer bill? Because I think, based on the fact that we have both the sewer and the Lockwood proposal being discussed this evening,
okay,
the documents say that there's two $3 million projects that need to be done for sewers, and that this is precipitating that to a degree.
we'll be discussing that, that aspect of it later, but of the sewer issue.
Right.
But I don't think we've asked specifically for a tax for a park at all. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen. We couldn't ask for that, but I don't know that the public's willing to tax themselves for that, but you never know until you ask.
They seldom say no.
Yeah, they seldom say no.
So if I understand the presentation, Lockwood has said basically, we're interested in building a senior living situation, but nothing else at this point. And they will be making payments to the township possibly as a result of whatever money they make. Is that what you said, Mr. Lippens?
So what we still need to work out is how and what a potential development agreement might entail and what the offer might entail. The initial offer was to provide the township with $100,000 payment in phase one and a limited amount of public improvements that were split. We're working to revise that just to make sure it's consistent with legally what we can do as part of a public-private partnership, and also that it is basically consistent with the sale or transfer of the property. So how the property would be transferred, what parts might be retained as public ownership, if it's possible to do easements. There's a lot of details that need to be worked out. What we have discussed basically is that there certainly is a value created by this proposed development that would go to the township as part of that proposal. And it would be up to the board to decide if that would be used to create some of the public amenities that were included in the vision plan.
Could we allow someone else to, anybody else, would you like to come up and ask? David, Mr. Gordon's got the mic. Okay. Okay.
Hi, I just wanted to say, it just dawned on me that when he suggested putting it out to see if people would be willing to pay, I mean, as one of very few members of the public here, I would absolutely be willing to pay more taxes, but I also accept that the rest of the town might not feel that way. Mm-hmm. And I would accept, you know, if it did come to a vote, if they didn't vote that way, so.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Ms. Devlin?
Mary Devlin, 9211 Brookside Drive. I'd like to ask Paul a question. Do you know exactly how much acreage will be utilized for the housing area and how much acreage will be used for a park at the front of the property? And regarding the park, the front piece of property, it's my understanding that it's 15.3 acres and the back part is 8.2. And if I'm incorrect, you can correct me, but do you have any idea what that is going to be? Because the largest piece of the property is from the front on Main Street back.
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing on the diagram that we were given that 6.4 acres is left for park.
Part of the presentation at all, this diagram?
Can you
is
turn
this
on your
part
mic?
of that?
I can't hear you.
Okay.
That diagram was included in the presentation.
Can you maybe bring it up and then point it out to Ms.
Sure.
Devlin?
Yeah.
It's on there. It's on there.
All this green space is 6.4 acres.
And also, regarding the band shell, I don't know why you need a band shell, because most bands that give concerts, they have their own take-up and set-down stages. And they have people that you know, in the band that do that.
Yeah.
So it's just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or suggestions, concerns? We've got Mr. Nelson.
Jim Nelson, 7777 Sutton Road. I'm just going to point out that you're trading about $9 million in sewer indebtedness to get 50 parking spaces, maybe 6 acres, and our planner is incredibly vague every time he comes to this meeting with answers to those questions about how much you're actually getting as a park. You're getting almost nothing. You're giving away the farm and getting, 50 parking spaces and 6 acres and a band shell that you can probably buy at Home Depot for a couple $1,000. Very sad.
Thank you.
Margaret Rydell, I'm kind of along with everybody else. 6 acres is not very much for a township park. I've got more than that in my backyard. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous, I think. And I don't know how much of that down there, when you're talking about the beach, actually how much frontage is there on the water?
90 feet.
Excuse me?
Approximately 90 feet.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about putting in docks and...
I don't think we ever talked about putting in docks.
I don't know, somebody said docks. They were talking about docks.
It was part of the synthesis
But
plan.
we haven't agreed to anything.
It might be 90 feet, but it's very narrow.
Yeah, I know it's very, very narrow. And plus it's right next to a marina which dumps gas into the water.
2 marinas.
Okay, thank you. And I know that boats spit out gas into the water, so I don't know, you're gonna have to put in some kind of cleaning for that and stuff. But I don't think 6 acres is very much for a whole township park.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, couple more. Okay, then
Very
we'll have
quickly.
to, okay.
I'm looking at the synthesis plan, which was part of the presentation, and it says here in the second paragraph, when built out, the plan anticipates 158 residential units with additional retail. Additional retail which will support the public amenities. So if the senior living area goes up, but the additional retail doesn't follow, which we have no guarantee of, what happens to what's written here? The marina, the dock, the beach, the town green, the central lawn, the band shell, and the connecting trail system. I don't see where there's, I mean, you're basically saying okay to a developer, but you don't have the amenities here for the community. All you have is a residential senior living area that gets put in. And you talked about next steps. I would hope that maybe one of the next steps you have is informing the residents of what you're doing by sending something in the mail to them as opposed to simply an invite to the public, because as you can tell, nobody's here. And lastly, if you're going to set up a subcommittee, I think it's a great idea, but I would caution you to not create a positive feedback loop on your subcommittee so that you just all say, oh, this is great, this is great, this is great. I think there's a lot of questions here, and I don't know how much money, if this thing gets built, is really going to come into the community. I don't think there's any hard figures on that. Will it even support one more store? We don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
If I could comment.
Go ahead. Yes, please. Go ahead.
First, as the planner has indicated, we have not given specifics on what they're offering on the financial side because we're in consultation, or will be, with our attorney. So we don't want to say they're going to offer such and such and then find out that's not allowable in his opinion under the township's authority or under various laws. What we have made clear to this potential developer is that the township board has the final say on any development, and that they will have to sell the township board and the community on this being a good project for the community. And if they don't, then they won't be successful in proceeding. So we're trying to get more clarification, get it further defined, and then turn it back to either the board or whatever committee or whatever process you want to do to go into further depth. But we've made it very clear that this was not what the board initially envisioned, or the community, and we've tried to push them further in that direction, but we have not made any commitment to them at any time. We've always been pushing to get their proposal improved so it'd be more in line with what you have talked about. And I don't see the board doing anything that would be financially detrimental to the township. So, and furthermore, Mr. Dockett, one of the things we pointed out to them is your running total of 400-some thousand that the township has invested in the site, and that it would be desirable if they would in some form compensate the community for the investment. Okay. So we're not ignoring facts. We're trying to get to a point where...
Well, you don't know the facts. Okay. You're not ignoring them, you don't know.
Thank you.
But thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that matter.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
You don't live here, you don't pay nothing. You pay no taxes in this township. You don't put anything into this township, you take it out.
Go ahead, Ms. Riddell.
Now I forgot what I was going to say. I was so interested in what Mr. Dockett was saying. Oh, I'm sorry that I'm not more up on this, but how many, when you're talking mixed-use stuff, are you talking businesses, stores?
Retail and housing.
And housing.
Yeah.
We can't fill up the houses or the retail that we have now. We got storefronts vacant all over the place, and we're going to have people come and build more. I go by Domino's, and I have seen one person in there. They may be doing fine, I hope they are, but it sure doesn't look like it. And where are we going to get more retail?
Okay. It's just I'm going to express my opinion about the senior housing. And, I mean, I could potentially be living there. Okay, I'm 63. You know, I think that it could jumpstart the downtown having 200 people or however many would live there, being downtown to use the library, to use the restaurants. It could jumpstart that area. And I'm not negatively thinking about that at all. I'm pleased that they moved it to the back of the site, that there could be more of a spectrum of housing opportunities there. This is just one of them. But I'm pleased that they're moving in that direction. This is not a final plan at all. This is just a negotiation that's going on back and forth. And when we think of what could be there and what it could do for the downtown, I'm thinking, you know, a couple hundred people could really make a difference in our restaurants down there. And the fact that there could be more restaurants down there. So, you know, they're not going to come in and do something where they're not going to realize a successful project. So I think it's just going to all come down to a negotiation and working together and bringing the community in to talk about it. I know the community has interest in a bank. There's interest in a bakery. There's interest in businesses that could exist down there if there were enough population to actually use it. And right now, there just isn't right downtown that many people, because once they're in their car, they're gone. So, you know, I appreciate hearing this proposal. I think we have an opportunity here to talk about it some more and to get the input, and I'm really thankful that we have heard all of this input, and it is going to be important for us to get more input than just everybody who's come here, because I know people out there are probably watching this and thinking about it. So we are going to have to move on to the next one soon, but I want to let the rest of my board members have their say.
Do we have more public comment, or are we on the public?
Do we have any more public comment, or because I've got a couple hands up over here?
I need a break.
Okay, really?
I need a break, and I don't want this to go on unless I'm here.
I'm going to say this
He
really
doesn't-
quickly.
okay, he can hear you.
One thing that would be helpful, I did come to one of the meetings with the vision boards and everything, and what was never clear is the cost the town has taken on this land, and it has lost a certain amount of tax revenue because of that. And what I could never figure out was how much that revenue is and what is the minimum amount of development that would have to happen in order to recover the cost that the town has lost, so that we use that, we either say, okay, yes, we're going to pay more taxes, or we look at the minimum amount of development to recoup that, and then the rest is icing on the cake. Does that make sense?
Yep.
What I'm asking?
Thank you. We can figure that out, yeah. Go ahead, Ms. Otto.
So one of the things, this was probably about a month ago or a month and a half ago when I spoke to the township manager in Dundee. And this was in regards to the wastewater treatment. So we had a discussion of what is going on in Dundee, what's going on in Northfield Township. So to give everybody an understanding, is Dundee is has about the same population as Northfield Township. The only thing different between us and them is they do have rural agricultural. We do too, but we have more lakes than they do. They have the Raisin River going through it. We have more lakes. That's really the only difference between us. As far as growth and everything, it wasn't until I had a conversation with him. Prior to that, I was not for senior housing or a senior living center. But before I talked to him, he made the comment that his community is very much for having a senior living housing there, because they cannot find one. They can't find somebody who would build in their area. And so
he commended us for at least having somebody wanting to build in our area. So that made me stop and think, the baby boomers are out there. There's more people out there that are going to need this type of housing than there is going to be the other type of people that need the housing. So I did kind of change my mind as far as wanting probably some part of it still being senior housing, but the rest of it being a different type of residential housing.
Sure. Ms. Chick.
Did I, excuse me, did I hear earlier that we had asked them about ownership, not just rental units, but ownership? Okay. The other question I have is, have they indicated what the rent on any of these units would be that they're basing their figures on?
Yeah.
I mean, not the rent. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Purchase.
The cost to purchase, yeah.
The question is what the cost of purchase of phase 2 might be?
No, if someone if they're going to put in housing where people are invested in the township by buying a home, not a home, but a unit or whatever, a condo, what would be the price point?
So we don't have that information because the independent living facility in phase 1, that would not be ownership.
Right.
That would be all rental. And in the memo, I included the price points for rents. Was $950 for the affordable component and $2,200 per month for the market rate. What we did have, and I can request more information on this, for phase 2, Lockwood would want an option to develop that phase 2 housing, and they've committed to making at least 50% of that for sale ownership housing. But we do not have details on what the price point would be.
All right, and I just wanted to comment on Mary's comment, and she left. I did do some checking, fact checking, and actually the median rent in Northfield Township is $934. So it's $950 is not outrageous for our community. And the average condo value in Whitmer in our township is $157,743. So that's a decent amount as well. I wanted to also comment that I've always heard since I've been here that people were requesting senior housing. At some level, there was always an interest in senior housing. So this meets, it's more than what we were interested in initially with the synthesis plan, but it does offer some. So I think there's room to negotiate. I also would like to see if it's possible, I do agree that 6 acres for a public park is not a lot of area, and if they could increase that, that would be great. I had one other thing, and I can't remember what it was, but I will get back to it. So, Ms. Koenig's remark about the recouping. We want to recoup the cost of what we've already put into the property and get that money back. Absolutely, that has to be part of the deal. The goal, however, was not just to neutral or be neutral, cost neutral and everything. We wanted to actually generate some revenue for the township as well.
Sure,
yeah.
I can appreciate that. It would just be helpful in understanding the project as a whole to know when we have hit that mark.
Yeah.
Right, and then what's beyond it.
Yeah, we'd asked for some financials, but apparently because they're still negotiating and things are still changing, we can't get much information yet, and hopefully at some point we'll have that information available to us. So thank you. It was a good question. Yeah. Yes, I'll go. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm still kind of neutral on the senior housing. A couple questions and comments. I agree 6.4 acres is not enough space for a park. I mean, most of our minimum development here is 5 acres. So I'm like, yeah. I mean, I think most of us here have more than 5 acres to play on. So, except you guys. So, again, I don't think the 6 acres is big enough for a park. And then I guess Mr. Lippens, when you're talking to them with the financials, I know they're talking about the payment in lieu of taxes based on the rents and that, if there's any number, like a basic number that you could give us on what the township would be collecting in taxes when you do go over the financials with them.
Yeah, that will be included in the report.
Any more?
Yep, I got a few
Go ahead.
comments. Where to start? We only have this one offer. We're talking about this one offer. I do find that troubling, only one offer. We'd like to see competitive offers, other ideas. It may take a while. That's one point. Another point I had on this is, I thought that was a good question. What is the minimum development needed to recoup the costs that we did have in the taxes we were receiving when it was a Van Curler property? And then not to mention the $420 some thousand that right now we have. I am very disturbed by the rental. I want property ownership. If this does end up being some senior condos where people can own the property, own the condo, it's theirs, then I would be more interested. But I do feel the park space is way undersized. It should be at least twice the acreage, or approximately half the total 22 or 23 acres we have, in my opinion. After all, most people did. I don't know about most. Many or most people wanted this to remain a park. There was other individuals that did want to see a little tax revenue, which is good to help pay for the park amenities and the property itself. I find this to be just a little too big, too much, and not quite what we had for our synthesis plan and such. So that's, I guess on this particular subject, that's all I can think of at the moment. And the gambling with what could happen is a problem too. This is gambling with a lot of money, and a lot of potential fun. I mean, it could just remain a park. I don't know. But we also talk about, going back to the park thing, why are people obsessed with raising taxes for different things? Privately funded parks. Privately funded, like for instance, Kiwanis even offering to put in a gazebo or a structure. We can do things, we can have things without forcing money out of people's pockets. There's plenty of people that have deep pockets and actually have grants and various private funding sources for these things. They could be found, and it could happen that way if we wish to stay on the park side of things. But these are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dockett.
McKenna was hired to get us, get the township several requests for proposals. The township paid McKenna $26,000. McKenna gave us one single bidder. That should have told somebody something right there. Yet these people still go on and keep this thing going. They got Lockwood for us. They want to put in 140 rental units for senior living. I'm a senior. I'm not against senior living, but they should not be rentals. People should make an investment. They don't make an investment, they don't pay any taxes. And they're here bidding on all the money we spend. So the township invested $420,000 so far. For our investment, so far, we got 2 picnic tables and a porta potty, a rented porta potty. That's it, for $420,000. I mean, should that tell us something? 3 years later? I mean, my God, this is embarrassing. It only took us 3 years to do that. So, I just can see us spending a lot more taxpayer money. Good after bad after good, and good after bad. If Lakewood put in 140 units at $6,200 a hookup? That would be about $860,000, and we'd only have to come up with $7 million more to do the plan. So they're going to pay less than $1 million, and the taxpayer's going to pop for over $7 million. How crazy can this board be? I'm beside myself when I see how crazy this looks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to? Ms. Zelnok, go ahead.
Sure. So I will say that we gave them, I believe, 60 days to come back to us. So I am disappointed that Lockwood's not here tonight. I think it's their 60 days. And the fact that we don't have any financial data, because that, to me, is a very key component to all of this. Senior living, I'm okay with that, certainly as the generation. I would like to see ownership as opposed to apartments. I think when you get into apartments, I can just envision Michigan tax tribunal cases, meaning arguing their taxes, going to the MTTA, or Michigan tax tribunals. I'm just, I've seen that happen in some of our other apartments that we have. So, I mean, individual owners, I think, is better, personally. We haven't had them under our board, but they have had in the past. So I think ownership would be better in that regards, because I could see us potentially going to the Michigan tax tribunals on this. I think we need to certainly know who owns the property, the open space. I think that's key. Who's going to own the park? Is that there or us? And I do not think there is enough park space. To me, 50-50 would be good. As far as the rent, 60% at $2,200 seems very high. I'm within $1,000. I think that's what they're saying, right? 60% of the rent would be $2,200. Yeah, I guess. But, $950 is our average. So I'm concerned about just the rent is. And then the other one is, so if we were to go forward with this proposal, let's say as is, does that mean we have to certainly do the basin? Could it be done without it? So, okay. So that kind of goes to Mr. Dockett's point. And then the other one is, I am very glad that Park and Rec is looking at this, because as we've owned this property now, and we as a board for 2 years, and like you said, we have a few picnic tables. For our ownership, yes, and 2 picnic tables and a porta potty. We need to do something.
3 of us are on here, the last board.
So we need to make it usable to our public. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. I think you got a lot of good feedback from the board and from the public, and so I'm hoping that at the next time, Lockwood will be coming.
Be a next time.
We should schedule them to come, and when you believe they're ready. Do you have any last comments based on what the board just asked? Because I'm going to go on to the wastewater treatment issue.
It sounds like the board would like Lockwood to come. I believe they've indicated they're available to come on October 9th.
Why don't we have a vote on that?
You could. The other feedback I'd ask for this evening is whether or not you desire to appoint a committee to evaluate, whether or not you'd like to post an RFP for the Main Street sites, and if you have any specific feedback. I did take notes on the comments made tonight. So
I think those are good decisions at our next meeting to actually vote on. As we think about it, I'm not opposed to a committee.
Are you opposed to a vote?
I'm not opposed to a vote.
Well, let's have one.
You want to make tonight was discussion, and we're going to talk about wastewater treatment.
We have votes after discussion.
All right,
almost
make a motion and we'll get a
every
second.
meeting.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to vote if we want to continue this or not.
Oh, to continue to hear from Lockwood? Okay.
Yeah, any of them, yes.
Okay, so Mr. Dockett has made a motion to continue in this process and to hear from Lockwood. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Okay, do we have a second?
Is that your motion, Mr. Dockett? Was it you want to continue or you do not want to
Do not
continue?
want
I do not
Oh, okay.
continue.
You're making a motion not to continue.
Not
hear
to
from.
continue.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion and support by Ms. Bellinger. All in favor of not continuing to...
Roll call.
We could
A
still
roll
have
call.
discussion too, at this
Oh,
point,
well,
if
we-
we need
Just
an
had discussion.
Do we need discussion on this one?
It might be that we want to get other options.
Some of us-
Compare. I
some-
mean, maybe this is the best option, but we need something else to look at.
I'd like to hear from Lockwood for real at some point.
Yeah, this isn't done. This
Yeah.
isn't the end product yet.
No.
We
But-
aren't even hit the tip of the iceberg
I mean,
on
do we
this
really
one.
think that they're going to take their big centerpiece out and then provide us with senior condos that we can, I mean, it sounds like we're probably not at this moment too excited about, what they want to do, and we only have 6 acres of park. I can't accept that. I don't know that they're going to be. I don't want to waste too much
Yeah.
of their time either.
Ms. Manley?
I know we talked at our last meeting, Mr. Lippens, I don't know if you can answer this, where we kind of still left kind of like an open RFP out there, that we would still accept proposals if they come in, or is that true?
We discussed it at the last meeting, and it's one of the items in your next steps that I asked for feedback on this evening.
Okay. So is that still out there or not yet?
It's out there for the board to make a decision on.
I thought we agreed to go
I
ahead.
thought we agreed that we
have
would leave
that
it out
out.
there.
I thought we said you would come back or we'd get cost on what it would cost to do the RFQ and the RFP, and we haven't received any cost.
Okay.
So I would like to see
I know it was
cost.
something that we talked about.
We said that you would come back, Paul Lippens and the township manager would come back with the cost that it would do to issue another RFP and to do an RFQ, and
So
we
we
don't
could
have that
still
data.
We don't
entertain
know.
ideas
It
while
should be
we're
done
talking to
already.
them.
See, I was under the impression we did have that out there for other potential developers to actually still be reaching out to us. I didn't know we were, close the door on that.
We gotta do it. I thought
I don't
it's gonna
think we
cost.
did close the door on it.
I thought it was a
I
cost
didn't think we
issue.
did either.
It's where do we stand on that?
Did you reissue
So,
the
okay,
RFP?
the proposal went out and had an end date on it, and the proposal you have from Lockwood is in response to that, the last posting you did. So that it might still be on the website, but it has not been updated to suggest a rolling, open RFQ process. With regards to whether or not you'd like a proposal for me for costs for staff time to put together either an RFP or an RFQ, I did look at that. It's my recommendation that you do an RFQ. The cost to do that really would be minimal. It would be less than it would take me to put together a proposal for you, evaluating whether you should do an RFQ or an RFP. If you want to keep it up, my recommendation is that we modify it, make it an RFQ, and put it up. We're looking at probably less than 5 to 10 hours of time, probably more like 5, and that's less time than we're spending meeting with Lockwood, so it's really part of the budget you've already authorized to move forward. And I think that the way we did leave it is I did need authorization from the board to do that. So if it's your desire to do it, I would like feedback from you that you'd like to do that.
Well, I would think most
Okay,
certainly
we
we
have
should be looking for other potential developers, absolutely.
Okay, we've got this motion on the floor. Mr. Dockett wants us to stop working with Lockwood at this point. So all in favor of stop working with Lockwood? You want a roll call vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a yes vote would be to stop working with Lockwood. Okay. Dockett?
Yes.
Zelenak?
No.
Chick? No. Otto?
No.
Manley? No. Chockley?
No.
Bellinger?
Yes.
Okay, that fails. Okay, so we will continue to negotiate with Lockwood based on a lot of the feedback that we've gotten. and the board needs to decide if it wants to appoint a committee and have a special presentation. We can schedule that special presentation for October 9th, and then decide on the committee and releasing the RFP, an RFQ, and you'll get more information on that for us at that time. And is that good enough for everybody? Okay, great.
So I have a question though. What are they going to do on October 9th that they couldn't have done today? And why aren't they here today?
They'll have more financials, right? You'll have more, a fuller report?
Yeah, I think that Lockwood could have been here this evening because the township had made this a public feedback. It was the preference of the manager that I present our progress to date. And I asked Lockwood for their availability for all upcoming board meetings, and they indicated they're available on the 9th. So this is, your presentation tonight was according to the feedback we got about setting your agenda.
Will we have the financials before that meeting?
We have not sat down with the attorney to discuss it, so I mean, I would like at least to have the opportunity to meet with the attorney to discuss the feedback we've gotten. We have gotten feedback on it, though. We just want to make sure that it's reviewed prior to coming to you.
Okay.
So I mean, my thought is if we don't have financials, I'm personally, as one board member, not interested in seeing them on October 9th.
I agree.
But how can we get financials if we don't have a final product?
Well, so wherever they are, to me, they need to show.
So whatever they're doing.
Whatever they, like if today was their final proposal, then I want to see financials with it.
Okay, but if it's not their final proposal, you're okay with no financials?
No.
No.
Because there's no sense to me to look at a proposal if I don't know the financials.
But do these kind of negotiations move that quickly? I mean, I would be surprised a developer could actually get all that information. I mean, typically, you've been working with developers before. Are we like being way too demanding?
I don't think you're being too demanding.
Okay, good.
I just think that we need to allow time to have the meetings and assure that the township's doing their due diligence. And so far, the guidelines we've gotten from the board have allowed us to do that.
Can we move on with wastewater treatment?
No, I'd like to move that we have the Lippens move forward with a RFQ for other proposals. 5 to 10 hours, no more than 10 hours of work. Probably we should say like 6 or 7 hours to send out an RFQ. So we have advertisement out there saying we have property we're looking for possible. What might you want to do? That kind of thing. I thought we were doing this all this time. Mm-hmm. So if this hasn't been done, I think this motion should be made now, and I'd like to make that motion.
Okay.
What part of that was your motion?
The part with the motion.
Well, I just have one question. Does the board ever go to like the University of Michigan Architecture School and say, here, we have this project and for free, get them to come up with something?
If you're going to have a conversation, will you please have them come to the mic?
Go ahead and complete your motion, Ms. Bellinger.
The motion is to, what do I want to say?
You said that Lippens move forward with an RFQ for other proposals.
Yep, RFQs at a, yeah, the maximum amount of hours would be 10. 10 hours. 10 hours for McKenna to release a, I guess, rollover or release another RFQ, however you word that,
Yep.
for the North Village property.
Okay. And for any and all of it? Because we do want RFQ for the retail anyway portion.
Yeah, I'll specify that there's a difference between, we will accept proposals just for the Main Street buildings as well as the entire site. It sounds like.
And is 10 hours
okay?
sufficient?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a second on Ms. Bellinger?
I'll second.
Who seconded?
Lenore already did.
Oh,
support.
Ms. Zelnok supported. Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye.
I'd like to have a roll call
Okay,
vote,
roll
please.
call vote, please.
Check.
Yes.
Otto.
Yes.
Zelenak.
Yes.
Bellinger.
Yes.
Chockley.
Yes.
Manley. Yes. Docket.
No.
Okay, that passes 6-0. Okay. Wastewater treatment. Okay. Now, these slides are meant to provide some background information and be discussion starters. So
Many members of the board are not really familiar with the issues. So this is our wastewater treatment plant constructed in 1961, and it was by Tetra Tech, by the way. They designed it. And it was serving the state of Michigan correctional facilities. So they've done some expansions over the years, and in 1997, it was expanded.
It was not Tetra Tech.
It was, according to some the notes that I got from Mr. Rubel.
No, it was not.
They got it expanded to handle 1.3 million gallons per day in 1997. The equalization basin was recommended in 1998, and then again in 2005 to present. So the state of Michigan and the federal government have issued the plant a permit to process 1.3 million gallons per day. So on here, on this chart, you'll see that the maximum daily flow over the last 5 years has well surpassed that 1.3 million gallons per day. And that's usually during springtime wet weather, as you can see. So this can cause the plant to bypass some of the treatment processes and release partially treated water. Recent bypass events, you can see the dates that we've had them. There's several days in 2018, quite a few in 2017, only once in 2015, and then there was an extended period of time in May of 2014, and we were over our permitted limits. The ones that are in black, they managed to partially treat.
What page are you on?
I'm on, I don't know.
Well, I can't follow you.
Okay, you can look up here on the board.
I can't see that far.
Oh, you want to come over here?
No.
Okay, page 7, thank you.
I want to know what page you're on.
This page here.
Okay.
Oh.
So in 2014, we were over the limits of what
Do you know
our
why?
permit
Do you
allowed
know?
us.
I just want to know, was it because of rainwater, or did something happen at the plant and it ran over? I don't think it was rainwater. I think the plant was down when it run over.
In
That's
May?
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, I don't know that.
Well,
I just know that we did release,
Yeah,
water
when it
that
was
not
released
treated.
was because they had problems at the plant, not
Okay.
because.
Okay.
I think that's important to know if you're gonna say that.
We'll verify that with Mr. Willis
Okay,
the next
let's
time we
not
see him.
forget about that, please.
Okay. So anyway, our historical usage of these are the number of unmetered customers that we have. So like homes, single family homes, some businesses. And you can see it's fairly consistent. We haven't had a lot of growth. And right now we're at 3,387 unmetered REUs in the unmetered customer category. Our metered customers are charged by the 1,000 gallons. And I don't have those numbers. So if you look at this is the age of our service areas when they were first established. The oldest one in Northfield, and then there's a Green Oak and another Northfield area. It starts in 1965, and our most recent was with the Whitmore Lake Road, which was in 2016. And I'll show you these on a map next. So I put the dates that the different areas were established on this map. You see the ones in red? Those areas are over 50 years old. And so there are some concerns about infrastructure when they get older. And the sewer lines that run from homes to the main lines are likely to be of inferior quality, inferior materials from that far back, and could be cracked from roots and have roots penetrating them. That's where you get the infiltration issues. This can also happen with newer lines too, depending on what gets planted over these laterals that go into the homes. But those lines are the property owner's business and their cost if they have failed lines that go out to the main lines. It's hard for us to manage those really very well. The guys at the wastewater treatment plant have been televising the main lines and correcting any infiltration issues that they find.
and which is helpful, but they can't televise all the lines up to each of the homes. So there could be, and probably are, a lot of infiltration issues coming from the homes into the main lines. So I just bring that up because Northfield Township is not unique. And I got this from a report from the American Society of Civil Engineers that 98% of publicly owned treatment systems were municipally owned. Although access to centralized treatment systems is widespread, the condition of many of these systems is also poor, with aging pipes and inadequate capacity leading to the discharge of an estimated 900 billion gallons of untreated sewage each year. Thankfully, we haven't done that here. But our infrastructure is aging, and we need to be cognizant of that and planning for that in making sure that we have money set aside for repairs and maintenance.
And do we?
Do we?
Yes.
That's part of the rates that we establish, is so that we can have the funds to fix things. That's part of the capital improvement plan that we haven't even talked about yet as a board. But it's an important aspect of this whole thing. So hopefully we do have enough to repair, it's only going to take one catastrophic failure and all of the fund balance is gone in the wastewater treatment plant funds. So this table shows the useful lifespan of many parts of the wastewater system. And one interesting thing that you'll see there is the interceptors. Now, they're supposed to be good for 90 to 100 years, and I don't know if we have any interceptors, but there was a catastrophic failure in Macomb County and in Shelby Township, I guess, where homes were falling into this interceptor that had collapsed. And it was a Christmas Eve in 2016. And I don't know if any of you heard about that, but it cost millions and millions and millions of dollars that they got a huge grant from the state. So and we find out that they were warned in 2013 that the walls of this interceptor was deteriorating and there could be a failure. So they knew a couple years ahead of time, but they didn't do enough about it, and then they had these homes falling in. So we just need to be paying attention to, we have this responsibility. So this is our timeline of the fees and the system development charges that we've had. The quarterly fees used to be $71.55. That was probably set with a rate study, but I don't know, that old one. The $84 was set as a result of a rate study, and then our most recent one was set at $90.20 because of a rate study. And then the system development charge, which is the connection fee, in 2009 was $35.50, and I don't know where that came from. I don't know if that was set as a result of a rate study or when that was originally set. But in 2014, we had a rate study that supported a connection fee of $59.73, but it was not adopted because the board thought, well, it might keep people from coming and, settling here or developing here. However, if you think about that, if in 2016, for instance, Green Oak Township decided to make good on that, that contract that we have with them for 769 REUs, we would have been leaving, the difference, we would have been leaving $1.9 million on the table, which could have gone 2/3 of the way to building an equalization basin. So we really do need to pay attention to what the rate studies say so that we set our rates appropriately and we're not giving away and then making our ratepayers pay the full freight of some of these improvements. So that was in 2014, but we did adopt that amount in 2017, and then we recently increased it based on a new rate study in 2018 to $62.55. And that's supported by the data. So we need to start thinking about our wastewater treatment plant. The point of decision is coming pretty soon here.
We've got, the state of Michigan really doesn't want to allow us to connect more to the wastewater treatment plant when the flow reaches about 85% of its capacity. 85% of its capacity is 1.1 million gallons per day. And you can see where we've been bumping over it with the average daily flow in some of the more recent years. So we are bumping up onto that 85%. So we need to be thinking about that in the future here. The spring flows, these are average spring flows that I took from Mr. Willis's report and averaged February through May, divided by 120 days. And those are the million gallons per day that we have been actually processing through the plant. And you can see the trend line is increasing. Just putting that out there. And here's a timeline of our additional commitments. So as we've been extending the sewer lines, in 2000 we did North Territorial, and that's supposed to be for 1,620 REUs. We've got the Green Oak Township agreement, which was for the 104 infill sites around the lake. I don't expect those to ever develop more than one or two because it's already built out. The Lake Point SAD only had 4 REUs, and those are all built out, so no more of those will be coming online. In 2003, the 7 Mile Road SAD was built. 169 REUs are expected out there someday. And then in
there's only about 2 hookups there.
Yep, so far. 2004, the Green Oak Township agreement, and this was 769 REUs west of US 23. And then we put Whitmore Lake Road SAD in for another 76.
How many is hooked up there?
In
0.
I don't know.
0.
But, you know, of these, about 2,700 remain to be connected. Ms. Bellinger?
I asked, and you did answer, I asked the question through email, when were these contracts or agreements formed or made? And you did reply back and gave me one was like a 20-year agreement, and the other was a 30-year agreement. Do you happen to recall? I think the one was, they both were Green Oak, were they not?
Yeah, they're both with Green Oak.
And the one actually expires in 2024.
2023, I think.
Yeah, right. That would probably be that one down there for 769, I guess.
I think that might be the 30-year one.
Oh, it's a 30-year one? One of them was a 20 and one was a 30-year.
Yeah, one was the 20 and one was the 30. I think the little one was the 20.
Yeah, the little one's the 20.
Yeah.
Okay. And one other question I have, it's kind of related. Is a SAW grant was used to come up with this data? Was that, do you know, or?
Which data?
Like how was the SAW grant, is it being applied to come up with this data that we have here, or?
Mm-mm.
Okay, maybe I can get some questions answered on the
The
SAW grant.
SAW grant is main purpose is for the capital improvement, to develop a capital improvement plan and to implement it, basically.
Yeah. It's to manage our assets.
It's to manage our assets.
Yeah, would you happen to know any more about, or how far are we done with using the SAW grant? Do we still have stuff coming from it? Do you know anything about that?
The SAW grant was signed by me in 2017, about December, and you have a 20-year grant. So by the end of December of 2020, you have to complete the work that's in that grant. That grant is for analyzing the condition of your current sewer system and analyzing the wastewater treatment plant. It's not set up to look at future further development that's talked about here.
Right.
A lot of preliminary work went into that with our own staffs, TVing the sewer lines and so forth. We also have been recently adding the computer system that was part of that grant to be able to pinpoint exactly where certain structures were in case there's a complaint. The guys can pull it up on their hand document and know exactly where to go for issues. But we are still making progress with that. As we build up enough to submit for reimbursement, then they've been reimbursing within 30 to 60 days. And this was a grant where it was a 10% match by the community. And I initially thought they wanted it all up front, but they said no, they want it as you go along. So if I submit one on behalf of the township for 100,000, they want 10, used by the township, and they reimburse you 90,000.
Okay.
Let me finish through here.
Yeah, thanks for the update. Sorry, but I didn't know if it was related somehow.
No.
Yeah, thanks.
So there was a trunk sewer study done, and this tells us what our capacity is, and this is a quote. What is immediately clear is that both segments A and B, representing the 18-inch cross-lot sewer and the 18-inch sewer in Barker Road immediately upstream of the existing 8-Mile Road pump station, are already estimated to be at capacity for peak flow conditions. So you can see it going under the expressway here and going up here. This is already at capacity during peak flows time. So we have an issue. I mean, we need to do something about these in the near future, just to be able to pass the water. So those are, that's part of our planning. That's part of our capital improvement that we need to take care of.
Is that out by North Territorial?
No, this is Barker Road. This goes
under
Barker Road. So this will impact our development on the North Village, because we'll need to expand there underneath Barker Road.
Is that saying the lines need to be replaced or added onto, or?
Either a force main or a larger line. Yes.
We may not have a North Village.
But it also impacts development at 7 Mile. So
Sounds like,
it impacts development in many areas of the township. And so we need to be thinking about these things as we're moving forward.
So Marlene, what if we don't develop? Let's just go there. What if we don't develop? Would we still have to repair that area? And the answer is?
Well, it's already at capacity. I mean, if we have any more infiltration,
exactly,
high flows, I mean, I don't know. That's a question for Brian.
Right.
To go along with that, so the basin has nothing to do with this. These lines need to be fixed. Do we have an estimate on what that cost would be?
Yeah, $1 million. Or if we have to do a pump station, there's a couple different options. And it's in the report, if you're having some bedtime reading, it's in the report. And there's a couple different options, and
Can you please give us the title of this report where we can find these? Is it a report we already have, or just remind us what it is?
Can you show the book to Ms. Bellinger? Did you get one of these?
Oh, yes, I picked up one today. Yes,
Yep.
Thank you.
So you can read about a lot of this stuff in there. So there are master plan considerations of whether we increase our capacity or not. And we have a village center where we wanted to develop that as a mixed use with residential. And then there are some different strategies for developing that. And we talked about infill development, commercial and residential as part of a mixed use project. And all of that, and here we have the synthesis plan. We couldn't really do anything if we couldn't take care of the sewer capacity there. We also have mixed-use development planned elsewhere in the township, and I'll show you pictures of where that is. Here we've got this is up at 8 Mile, and so
it's after 10 o'clock. Did you know that?
It's 10:02. So we'll get through here. If we don't keep getting interrupted, it will be. This is where Earl Lefebvre's property is, and the water tower. This is the North Village area. Those are undeveloped yet, and if those are going to be developed as planned, we're going to need wastewater treatment for them. Here's the Donna Lane property that was expected to have 62 units in it. Here we've got in North Territorial.
They've
We've got a lot of vacant-
they've been going to develop down the lane for
We've got a lot of vacant
15
property
years.
down there. And we've had some people coming in to the office to take a look at some of the properties down there. And if those were to develop, we would need our equalization basin. So anyway, making a decision on the equalization basin, this is how long it takes. It's a 2-year process. A couple months for the engineer, 4 months for the design, there's bidding and there's construction. So an example timeline would be if we could make the decision by January, we could have it complete by October 2020. So that's, that's something that this board needs to think about. If we're going to meet our responsibilities to those who have already contracted for tap-ins, contracted for sewer service in their areas and have paid for the SADs, we need to be thinking about what we're going to do to meet our obligations. So, discussion. But we don't have very much time, and we can always bring it up at the next meeting as we're talking about it, but I encourage you to read through all of that material. It won't put you to sleep. It didn't put me to sleep. It's fascinating, but anyway, feel free to do that. And if any quick questions here? Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the presentation.
I do.
Does the public have any questions too?
Oh yeah, does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
Who's bored?
I can stand on that side. Okay.
Mr. Gordon, I'll twist your number. It does not sound really loud. Every time you come up here, it's a bigger number.
Yeah, it has gone from 3, 6, 9, 10.
The last
You might
time
as
I
well
looked-
add it to 20.
Here's what I do know. You have $3 million for your trunk lines, $3 million for your retention basin, but it's not $3 million. It's $4.4 million for each once it's paid off, so that's $8.8 million. We can just stick with that figure from now on, $8.8 million. That's the cost if it's done now. So I thought this was a great presentation. There's lots of information in there.
Have you got the 10% retention in there?
Sorry?
There'll be a 10% retention in there also.
Oh, is that on top of it?
Well,
So now we're at 9.1 million.
Yes,
Sorry, close enough.
when they borrow the money, it's a 10% retention.
Okay,
So
let's keep going.
I think it's important to go to the voters, and especially to the people that are in the sewer system, and ask them. First of all, you still don't have enough information. Mr. Dockett asked you a question. Do we have enough money in there for the infrastructure maintenance that we were looking at? If the plant, according to your presentation, life expectancy is 50 years, you're already past that. If you're talking about a new plant, now you're talking about $40 or $60 million. Plus the lines, which are going to be old. It's another $9.1 million, including the retention. Anyway, you're looking at tens of millions of dollars because you need to have growth. And Mr. Dockett said, do we have the money there now? If we've got commitments to 2,700 REUs and these people are paying money in, you said hopefully we have enough money. That's not an answer.
We have $1.5 million
According to the
in our
study
fund
that
balance.
was given to us and the fee structure and everything, it was based on that, and that's what we did, is we built we increased the fee structure according to the study. And if Mr. Dock was paying attention when we voted, he would have known that.
Okay, so $1.5 million is what you have in there for maintenance right now on a plant that is beyond its usable life, apparently, if 50 years is the life. Your lines are 60 years old or older, and you're looking at millions of dollars to replace them. You don't have enough money from the commitments you've made to pay for maintenance. Why are you even talking about expanding and spending more money to expand when you don't have enough money to pay for what you've got?
Because step one is an equalization basin if you want to expand a plant.
I've never heard that the equalization basin is required for expansion of the plant. What I'm saying is that you don't have the figures in place, but you want to spend millions of dollars, and you need to talk to the people that are in the sewer system and say, We want growth here. Our master plan is calling for growth. Are you ready to put up $60 million to facilitate this growth? Or maybe we should change the master plan.
No, it's up to 60 million.
Well, you
Okay.
know, ask your Tetra Tech guy what it costs to replace the plant. Because if you have to replace more than 30% of it, you can't. You have to put in a new plant. You can ask.
We'll get some real data.
Yes, some real data
Mr.
would be
Gordon.
very helpful
Yeah.
before you borrow more money. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Chick.
Oh, sorry. I actually want to borrow Ms. Koenig's first question when you stood up and asked the board, one of our obligations is to make decisions based on the health and the welfare and the safety of our citizens, and we all voted yes, we are. I want you to consider the fact that we are releasing partially treated wastewater into the Huron, is it Huron River, right? Yes. I actually got some information from Mr. Willis. He wrote me how the whole process goes when the flow goes through the plant. And there are a lot of bypasses. The flow gets chlorinated before it's released, but it does not get fully treated. And I did actually talk to Susan Shink, and I asked her if she could please check, because she's running for a drain commissioner, if she could help me with this question, because a member of the public asked me, several members actually asked me if we are releasing water partially treated flow into Whitmore Lake. And I said, no, we're probably not, but let me ease your mind, I will check on it. So Ms. Shink actually looked into it, and she called me back today. She had spoken with Mr. Pratt, and she said that all the effluent is being released into the Huron River. It does not go into Whitmore Lake. However, he said that they don't know the timeline for how long it takes for that flow to affect the groundwater or the waterways. So it's something to consider that, who here on the board, if we really care about the health and safety and welfare of our residents or ourselves, are we okay with releasing partially treated sewage into our environment? It's something to consider, along with our reuse.
Yep, okay, thank you.
We've never been sued. So I don't.
It's the integrity of our township.
I know what I mean is, if we were polluting, the Hamburg would have us in court. They did before. So if we were polluting that creek, we'd be in court in Livingston County. So I don't. I'd like to say I don't believe that.
Okay, we need to move along here with, it's 10 o'clock, and we have several items on the agenda to complete. Okay, will you all indulge the agenda items so that we can vote on these conditional use permits here? I'd like to make a motion to approve the Spiritus Sanctus conditional use permit at 4225 Joy Road to construct a new office annex building on the site.
Support.
Motion by Chalkley, support by Bellinger. Any discussion on this one? All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. The next item, I'd like to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit from Smoky Acres, 3500 6 Mile Road, to construct a barn to provide end-of-living care for cats.
I'll support.
Motion by Chalkley, support by Otto. Any discussion on this one?
I actually do have a question on this.
Go ahead.
I'm for it, but my question is, why did it even have to be a conditional use? Why is it considered like a kennel? Do we do conditional uses for horse barns? Wouldn't it be more like a horse barn than it would be a kennel?
Well, she's going to have a lot of cats there.
Yeah.
It
has to, if it's not the same thing, it has to be similar, and it's more similar to a kennel than a horse barn.
Okay. Cats don't typically make a lot. I can see kennels with dogs because dogs bark, but okay, I don't know. Anyway, that was my only thought is, it seemed to be a lot of. So what would happen if she just did it without coming to us? No, I'm serious.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
That has happened.
I mean, if they just built a barn and said,
Well,
I'm gonna-
it has happened. We've had a situation where a gentleman built an attachment to his house without getting permits and without going through the proper channels. Because of that, he had to come to the ZBA to get a variance. We could have asked him to tear the whole thing down.
Right, but we probably didn't.
We didn't. We
So,
worked
but-
with the
yeah,
person
I know. It's
to
good
make
to be-
sure that he was in compliance. He didn't have, that one particular person did not have enough money to have an architect. Our township manager at the time helped find one that would give him a pro bono. So we did work with the individual, but this is more of an issue for not for the person himself, but people protecting that person against other people who have properties attached.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
That they don't get sued.
Yeah, I was just curious, how it got classified more as a kennel and had they just put up a barn. But anyway,
Okay.
I'm all for it. It's just.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you, that passes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit request from People's Express for 175 Barker Road for minor repair of fleet vehicles.
I'll support.
Motion by Chalkley, support by Otto.
I had some questions on that one.
Okay.
I was looking to find out if that property had ever been requested for different use in the recent past, and I didn't come up with anything specific, I guess, on that. Is People's Express, is this going to be another tax exempt property?
Are they, yeah, they're nonprofit, right?
Okay.
They are nonprofit.
Are they
Yes.
nonprofit?
It would come off the taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And I understand the Planning Commission, you said this has been tabled until they receive a site plan and so forth?
No.
Conditional use permit was approved. The site plan was tabled because
Site plan was tabled.
there was a conflict with the site plan.
Okay.
Okay.
But to answer your question about that property, was it considered for other use? Yes, it was. There was
And-
other people that looked at it for other use.
But it was denied the variance?
I
or
don't
did-
think it was denied.
It was
variance.
denied, he was sued, for 5, 6, 7 years in the courts. He wanted to have his record and stuff there. He fought them for probably 10 years. They would not give Myron a break, so they really...
Oh, this is,
Okay,
this
well,
wasn't, we're talking
After
after Myron,
Myron.
not before Myron, or during Myron.
Yeah,
We're talking after Myron.
Myron still owns it today.
yeah, I'm referring to the
Yeah, I know,
current
but what
owner.
what the question was, has it been looked at for other things?
Yes, he
besides-
tried to sell it, for the last few years and was turned down.
Turned down because of the use? He couldn't get a conditional
I
use?
don't know why, but he was turned
somebody
down.
left. I mean, somebody was going to make an offer, and then they decided not to, so he just
Well, the
didn't
township gave him a
complete
rough time.
the sale. So anyway,
They
we
were-
now have an opportunity to have a good-looking, a useful public use to that place. It's not a pretty site currently, so it's going to
No,
look
but
a lot
there's another
better.
piece of property off the tax rolls, too.
And it's right next to the railroad track, so.
I'd like a
anyway.
roll call vote on this.
No, I
That's a
wanted some
roll call vote.
discussion on this.
What else do you got to say, Mr. Dockett?
Because it's coming off the rolls, and because it's for a nonprofit, I would like to have you look at page 6, down towards the bottom, where just below the building on the left-hand side, it says a 20-foot setback. Now what that is the creek has 100 foot of right-of-way, of easement for the creek. And the creek's in the center, so it's about 50 foot either side of the center of the creek, which is not showed on there, but it's on the left-hand side of the page. I would like to know if it's coming off the tax roll, if Doug Anderson would give that 20 foot of easement to the Parks and Rec to have the river walk would go all the way from a marker to the very end of the property that goes back 500 and some feet. From that point, you could go across the creek to the school. You could keep going all the way to Main Street. Because that house that's back there could be condemned. The county owns where the big pump is. You could get through there from Marker Road if he agreed to. So
That's a good idea.
It should be a tit for tat.
But we
Good
can't,
idea.
we can't make that a condition of approving it.
We can't make that a condition of this because the Parks and Rec, we're voting on this, and that is not part of it. If the Parks and Rec want to go into negotiations with People's Express, that's up to the Parks and Rec to have that discussion.
I'm just saying, he's getting something that nobody else could get, so I think it would be worth a try.
Well, I'm certain that will be a discussion in the future. And People's Express may be amenable to that. Who knows? It's worth the question. Thank you.
Do we happen to know what the value is on the property? The taxable value?
Excuse me, what did you say?
I do not know what the taxable value is.
Okay, just trying to see what the value was.
What did he sell it for? I don't know. What's he selling it for?
300? Because it would have been
300,000?
assessed differently on the resale.
Yeah.
Right, but that's what he's selling for.
Okay.
300.
Okay. That's.
I turned it down for 40,000.
Okay. Roll call vote on this one, please.
Otto?
Yes.
Manley? Yes. Chockley?
Yes.
Zelenak?
Mr. Burns, since I'm on the People's Express board, what's your opinion on my vote?
You don't have a pecuniary interest in the vote, you don't have a
Well, I'm going to vote yes, you can explain.
No, if I can vote yes, I'll vote yes. So if I don't have, thank you.
Docket?
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Chick? Yes. Bellinger?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Amazing.
7-0.
I'll work
What
on
do you
those,
know?
I'll work on
Okay.
those, that 20 feet for you.
Okay.
Seriously, I'll ask Doug about it.
Okay. I got something else to ask him about too. So
Okay,
anyway.
you better start asking before
Yep.
he gets
All
his
right.
plans drawn.
The next item is to consider resolution 18594 to oppose Senate Bill 0637. Okay. Ms. Bellinger brought this to the board, so I'll let her.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you again for getting us on this meeting, because like I say, it dovetails into the October 4th hearing in Lansing on this Senate Bill 637. The big concern for local units of government should rightfully be the usurpation or the trampling of the rights of the local units of government to have a say in negotiating with, utility providers and so forth in the public right of way. So I'm asking the board to consider approval of this. Again, like the previous revolution we passed a year or so ago, it doesn't have any teeth, but it does alert other public entities that we're here, don't trample us. We're here and we care about what's going on in our community. That in a nutshell is, I guess, what I have to say on it. And thank you for people that came out and spoke on this issue today.
Okay, thank you. I want to mention that I called the MTA about this because I wanted to know if they had a position on it, and spoke with Judy, and she said that they had been working with the committee at the Senate for many months, every week, on this particular
That's true.
Senate bill, and that they were able to get them to change the Senate bill and add some things to make it more friendly to municipalities. However, they have decided that they're staying neutral. They're not taking a position on this legislation. And she said they didn't talk about the health implications of 5G or anything like that. So they don't have an opinion on that. But after all of that, all of the negotiations, they couldn't say, yeah, this is a good thing, but they're also saying, no, it's not. I mean, they're not saying it's a bad thing. So I was surprised at that.
Yeah, that's what Judy, I spoke with her at the hearings a couple times and things, and that is what, initially they were opposed, and they negotiated with NOFs quite a bit on this, and the best they could do is be neutral.
Right.
And even though, in my opinion, MTA, I'm disappointed in MTA because they should be looking out for the local units of government. That's who they are supposed to be working for.
Maybe they feel that they got everything they could have gotten.
She actually said to me that it's going to go through whether this or that, and they didn't really care a whole lot for it, but that's as best as they can get away with.
Okay.
That's what she seemed to think anyway, but I am asking that we support this resolution.
Do you need a second?
Ms. Otto? No, we don't have a motion
I
yet.
don't think I didn't motion
No.
yet.
I know that we have been approached several times, at least the 6 years that I've been on the board. We've been approached 2 times to have cell towers in. I still think that it is the fundamental power of the township to approve to have a cell tower in or not to have one. We had one put in on 6 Mile, the other one was on North Territorial, and that was part of the township property that it was put on. And I wasn't aware of Craig Warburton, the one that was put out on his. I wasn't aware of that one, and when that was done. But I do feel that it's the township obligation to the community of whether to have one or not have one. And if you look at the opposing arguments that was on page 18 of 19, it does say that many townships and local governments are seeing an increase in requests, and that many of these placements are going to be at the street level, which means they could be on Main Street.
Yeah, right outside your bedroom window.
They can be on my front lawn.
Yes.
I mean, that's what they're talking about.
That's why people are up in arms.
So for me, I understand the health issues. I do understand that and everything, and those are concerning to me. I don't think that there's enough, there has to be more documentation out there, more studies in regards to the health issues, but I think as a township, it does take away our control.
Okay. Ms. Chick.
So, as you are aware, we do have an ordinance about how close cell towers can be from each other, but that's what I'm asking is, will that usurp our ordinance?
This one?
Okay.
Yeah.
Means nothing.
It's nothing. Thank you.
Yeah. So,
And I'll make a motion that the Township Board approve Resolution 8, let me get these on here. Resolution 18-594 to oppose Senate Bill SB 0637, Small Wireless Communications Facilities Deployment Act.
I'll support.
a motion by Bellinger, support by Otto. Any more discussion on this?
And to send a copy of this resolution, it's in here, forward it to the representatives as listed.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think, the township should have a say.
Yeah.
We have an ordinance, we should be able to stick to our ordinance, and they shouldn't be, exceptions be made on that. So, and I know if it becomes state law supersedes our ordinances, but I just think we shouldn't lose local control. So.
Right.
That's my comment.
Okay.
Roll call?
I guess roll call.
Bellinger.
Yes.
Docket.
Yes.
Zelenak.
Yes.
Shockley.
Yes.
Manley, yes. Otto.
Yes.
Chick. Yes.
Okay, thank you. That passes 7-0. Okay. All right. Next item is second call to the public. Anyone? Yeah, no, they're not all talked out. Here we go. Let's do Ms. Riddle first.
I hope it's on. I guess it is.
Riddle.
No, I'm going to be nice this time. Mr. Ains, I was not referring to you that you were aggravating about the key. I just think that there ought to be more than 2 keys. Not your fault, but that's all.
Madam Supervisor, if I could clarify my comment.
Go ahead.
Chief Wagner has been extremely cooperative in helping get the improvements done to the facility to expedite the Kiwanis having the sale. And we look to him for any issues that have to do with the safety and welfare of the public. And there's many times that I defer to him on that basis. And so, I think he has good reasons for his concerns. But, it's up to us to evaluate them, and ultimately the board to evaluate what would be the appropriate action. So thank you.
Can I
Thank you.
interject on this? Could I actually make a motion that we permit another key to be made? That one may be kept by the chief, one may be in hands of the manager, and one more that could be checked out to people, so we have 3 keys total? May I motion that we permit 3, an additional key made for this? 75 Barker.
Sure. I think we could just do it.
I'll support.
Let's just do it.
He reports to us.
But there are issues with keys.
They must be signed out and only...
And they should be signed out by the person carrying the key.
I agree.
So what we've had is, somebody checks out the key and then they give it to somebody else and they give it to somebody else and who has the key? And they're signing the liability form, so they are on the hook if something happens and
Well,
somebody gets into the
then
facility.
they're on the hook, yes.
And we have issues, not just with Barker. We have issues with this building and the community center. We have had issues with people having keys, and we haven't kept good track of it. So it's an issue with our building use policy, and it's something that we haven't developed yet, but we need to get done and done right,
Well,
so that we don't have liability.
Right. Can we issue one more key? And like you said, they're already filling out the liability forms. Can we go ahead and have one more key floating around for this 75 Barker to be assigned to somebody as they need for this particular, more than anything, this particular weekend or 2?
Yeah. I agree. Okay, we can get it done. Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
David Gordon again, still on Hellner Road. 2.5 hours ago, after the first call to the public, Trustee Otto tried to clarify something, and I would wish that you would be more careful when you characterize or try to clarify something. You're talking about a borrowing resolution that was passed by the Board of Trustees when I was sitting on the board.
I do know that.
It was not done to tie anybody's hands. If you've read it, because I believe I helped you get a copy of it, it doesn't tie anybody's hands. What it does do is it says that the board must send out a postcard. They can't just put an ad in the local paper. You must send out a postcard to the taxpayers of this community and invite them to come to a meeting and explain in the postcard that you're going to borrow, you're thinking of borrowing some money for a particular project, and you would welcome their input on this proposal. That is exactly what the language is.
I
And,
understand
can
that.
finish,
I
please?
understand the intent.
And
Your
can I finish,
intent-
please?
Yes.
This was not done to tie anybody's hands, because it doesn't tie anybody's hands. It was done to inform the public, because the previous board, the one I served on, as Mr. Dockett pointed out, went out without asking anyone at a special meeting and borrowed about $4 million to double the cost of this building. So this was done to ensure that future boards can't behave in that fashion to the taxpayers of our community. That's why it was adopted. And that's the only reason it was adopted.
I get that. But the intent of it was, when you read it, and I had 2 attorneys look at it, the intent of it was, number one, when that ordinance was adopted, it was never reviewed by an attorney.
That's not true.
Well, the attorney that sits on our board now has never seen it, so.
That's not true. Mr. Burns?
Seen what?
The borrowing resolution that the board passed in 2008.
I've seen it, I haven't looked at it.
Okay.
Okay, well, I was told he hasn't seen it. So the other thing that I was told is that we already have, when it comes to bonding, we already have a statute by the township. Anything that's bonded, we already have a statute that tells us this is the process that you have to put in place. So the ordinance while you wanted it at 250,000, it doesn't matter if we're bonding $1. We still have to have a process in place in which we have to notify the public. Anything that we borrow, we have to notify.
Apparently not. Because when they borrowed $3.8 million,
I
they
wasn't
didn't
on the
inform
board
anybody.
yet.
Whether you were on the board or not is not the point. When an ordinance or a resolution gets adopted by this board, it's still in effect whether you're serving or not.
That's why they paid cash. That's why they paid cash for the park.
Let's let Mr.
That's why they spent
I just wanted to clarify.
That's exactly what happened.
Mr.
They had a closed meeting, or had like 4 people. They voted to pay cash for the park. That's how they did it. They just went around the people. That's the kind of stuff they pull.
Okay. Let's let Mr. Gordon finish.
So the information that you got that the attorney hadn't looked at it is not accurate. And if you think there's something on the books that would have precluded the previous board to our board from borrowing money without informing the public, they didn't follow that procedure. That's why this is on the books, and I would like to keep it on the books so that people don't do any ends around, and the voters of this community and the taxpayers are informed before they get hit with a bill.
I'm not against having it on or not having it on. What I wanted to clarify is that it did not have to go to a vote. And that's how it was explained by one of the members, is that the $250,000 had to go to vote first before we borrow the money. And that's not true.
Okay.
That ordinance, that indebtedness ordinance, or our statute does not require it to go out to vote before we determine if we're voting. Yes, we have to have a public hearing. Yes, we have to notify the public.
Okay. Okay. Done?
Yes, I've finished clarifying it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. A second?
Ms. Chalkley.
You didn't finish? Okay.
The reason that the key was a problem, and Mr. Brown would get the key and let either Mary or I have it so we could do the work in the store, was that we had to keep bringing it back. We couldn't just keep it. We had to, that's where another key would help. We wouldn't, the person that signed it out could then keep it. But as it was, we didn't know when somebody would want it back. So that's why the confusion about the, no, we don't have a problem with somebody signing it out and keeping it.
Okay.
It's just that it was almost impossible.
Thank you. Okay. Any other members of the public? Okay. Board member comments. Ms. Bellinger?
That's right. I'm going to talk for about a half hour, I think. Just because I love it here. I do want to say we got this Saturday cleanup. Anybody wants to come out to the park and help us Saturday at 1 o'clock this Saturday, we're going to do a little cleanup of a 1 mile path. Thank everybody for coming out to the meeting. There it is. Zoom up. Yep. Okay. It's a groovy thing. And if you have any questions about this hearing coming up in Lansing, I can get a hold of me. If you want any more information on this thing that Mr. Colbeck and his wife put out about wireless radiation, I can certainly give one to anybody. Okay. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for the participation that we did have today.
Okay, Mr. Dockett.
I want to tell the clerk to get me my ballot as soon as possible. It's going to take a long time to vote, so please send mine first. Thank you.
See, you come before. Okay. All right. Ms. Chick, do you have any comments?
No.
No. Ms. Otto?
The other thing I have to ask is if you are not registered to vote, get out there to register. It's your right. October 9th.
Okay. Ms. Manley?
Again, get out and vote, register, get your absentee ballots, come and get sample ballots. It's a long one. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Zelnok? Anything? You're
Good
all
night, everyone.
Good night. Yeah, I'm all good too. Thank you very much for coming out tonight, and thank you for all the public who came and gave their opinions. And anybody who's out there watching on TV that has some thoughts, feel free to send an email or call, and I'd be happy to hear what you have to say.
They're sleeping
all right.
already.
I move to adjourn.
Support.
Oh, okay. Everybody supports. Okay.
Aye, aye, aye.